The anomaly tore through subspace like a wound in reality itself, and USS Voyager rode the shockwave straight into the impossible. On the bridge, Captain Catherine Janeway gripped her command chair as the ship bucked violently, the viewscreen strobing between the familiar star patterns of the Delta Quadrant and something else, something that made her navigation console scream warnings in 12 different languages. "Report," she barked, her coffee mug already a casualty on the deck. "We're passing through some kind of spatial intersection," Harry Kim's voice cracked with either excitement or terror. "It's not a wormhole, Captain. It's more like, reality is folded here, and we just got caught in the crease." Tom Paris fought the helm, his hands dancing across controls that suddenly felt sluggish, wrong. "Whatever it is, it's pulling us through whether we like it or not." The ship lurched one final time, and then the sensation of falling simply stopped. The viewscreen stabilized, showing stars, but B'Elanna Torres knew immediately something was catastrophically wrong. Her engineering instincts screamed it before her console confirmed. "Captain, these star positions," Harry's face had gone pale. "They don't match our astrometric database. At all. We're not in the Delta Quadrant anymore." Janeway stood, her command presence filling the bridge even as her mind raced through impossibilities. 7 years fighting their way home, 70,000 light-years of hell, and now this. Location: unknown galaxy, 7 of 9 stated from her alcove station, her Borg-enhanced efficiency cutting through the chaos. Stellar density and distribution patterns are inconsistent with any region of our universe. However, I am detecting energy signatures that do not conform to known technology. Tuvok's Vulcan calm was the eye in their storm. "Captain, sensors show an artificial structure on a planet in this system. The energy signature is unlike anything in Federation databases, but it is undeniably advanced technology." Janeway made her decision in the heartbeat between catastrophe and opportunity, the same instinct that had kept her crew alive for 7 years in the Delta Quadrant. "Set course for that planet. Whatever pulled us here, we need answers. And Mr. Kim, start scanning for any sign of the anomaly. We may need to backtrack." "Aye, Captain," Harry said, but his expression said what they were all thinking. They'd been trying to get home for 7 years, and the universe had just moved the goalposts to another reality entirely. The planet below was unremarkable, M-class, breathable atmosphere, similar to hundreds they'd catalogued. But the structure Tuvok had detected sat in a cleared area that looked almost ceremonial, surrounded by what sensors identified as Naquata, an element that didn't exist in Federation science. "Away team," Janeway ordered. "Chakotay, Tuvok, 7, Torres, you're with me. Tom, you have the bridge. If we're not back in 2 hours, get Voyager to a safe distance and keep scanning for that anomaly." The transporter beam deposited them 50 meters from the structure, and Janeway's first thought was that it looked like a ring stood on its edge, perhaps 9 meters across, made of a material that seemed to drink in light. Strange symbols covered its surface, 39 of them by her quick count, and in front of it sat a pedestal covered in similar markings. "Fascinating," Tuvok observed, his tricorder humming. "The ring structure is composed of an unknown alloy, but its purpose appears to be technological rather than decorative." Torres was already kneeling by the pedestal, her engineer's curiosity overriding caution. "These symbols, they're not any language I know, but there's a pattern here. Like coordinates, maybe? Or a dialing system," 7 added, her ocular implant focusing on the ring. "The Borg have assimilated thousands of species technologies. This design is unfamiliar, but the energy reading suggests it generates a stable Einstein-Rosen bridge. A wormhole generator." Chakotay moved closer to the ring, his hand instinctively near his phaser. "That could explain how we got here." Before Janeway could respond, the sound of weapons fire cracked across the clearing, but not phasers. The energy signatures were different, more kinetic, and very definitely aimed at them from the Trilene. "Take cover." Tuvok's security training kicked in instantly, and the away team scattered behind the ring structure as projectiles sparked off the Naquata-laced ground. Then voices, human voices, shouting in English with distinctly American accents, "Cease fire. They're unarmed civilians." A team emerged from the trees. 5 individuals in military tactical gear, carrying weapons that looked almost primitive compared to Federation standards but were clearly effective. The leader, a man with silver hair and an expression that suggested he'd seen too much and believed too little, held up one hand while keeping his weapon trained on them with the other. "I'm Colonel Jack O'Neill, United States Air Force, Stargate Command," he announced, his eyes scanning the Voyager crew with tactical precision. "And you're standing next to an ancient outpost with technology you shouldn't even know exists. So let's start with the easy question, who the hell are you, and how did you find this place?" Janeway stepped forward, every inch the Starfleet captain despite being light years from the nearest starbase in a universe that might not have a Starfleet at all. "Captain Catherine Janeway, USS Voyager. And Colonel, I think we have a lot to talk about, because my crew and I are very lost, and that ring might be the least strange thing we've encountered today." The woman beside O'Neill, blonde, brilliant eyes that marked her as the scientist of the group, was staring at 7 of 9 with poorly concealed shock. "Sir, those implants, they're not Goa'uld, and they're definitely not ancient." "What are you?" 7 met her gaze evenly, unbothered by the scrutiny. "I am 7 of 9, tertiary adjunct of Uni Matrix 01. I am human, but I was assimilated by the Borg Collective at age 6. I have been liberated for 3 years." She paused, processing the confusion on their faces. "You do not know what the Borg are?" "No," O'Neill said slowly, his weapon lowering slightly but his suspicion radiating like heat. "We really don't." The large man beside him, clearly not human, with a gold symbol on his forehead and the bearing of a warrior, spoke in a deep, measured voice. "These are not Jaffa. They carry no symbiotes. Yet they possess technology one have never seen, and speak of collectives and assimilation." "TLCS right," said the younger man with glasses, excitement bleeding through his caution. "Captain Janeway, you said USS Voyager. As in, a ship? Your energy signatures didn't match any Death Glider or Teltac we know, but we detected something in orbit before you beamed down. That's your vessel?" "Dr. Daniel Jackson, I presume," Janeway said, recognizing a fellow scientist's enthusiasm even across universal boundaries. "Yes, Voyager is in orbit. We're a Federation starship, displaced from our galaxy by a spatial anomaly. We detected this structure and came to investigate." "Federation?" The woman, her name tape-read Carter, looked like she'd just been handed the keys to a physics problem she'd spent years trying to solve. "Captain, what year is it where you come from?" "Stardate 53987.4, Janeway replied, then seeing their blank expressions, calculated backward. "By Earth's calendar, approximately 2377. O'Neill and Carter exchanged a look that spoke volumes of classified information and impossible decisions. The woman beside O'Neill, blonde, brilliant eyes that marked her as the scientist of the group, was staring at 7 of 9 with poorly concealed shock. "Sir, those implants, they're not Goa'uld, and they're definitely not ancient." "What are you?" 7 met her gaze evenly, unbothered by the scrutiny. "I am 7 of 9, tertiary adjunct of Uni Matrix 01. I am human, but I was assimilated by the Borg Collective at age 6. I have been liberated for 3 years." She paused, processing the confusion on their faces. "You do not know what the Borg are?" "No," O'Neill said slowly, his weapon lowering slightly but his suspicion radiating like heat. "We really don't." The large man beside him, clearly not human, with a gold symbol on his forehead and the bearing of a warrior, spoke in a deep, measured voice. "These are not Jaffa. They carry no symbiotes. Yet they possess technology one have never seen, and speak of collectives and assimilation." "TLCS right," said the younger man with glasses, excitement bleeding through his caution. "Captain Janeway, you said USS Voyager. As in, a ship? Your energy signatures didn't match any Death glider or Teltac we know, but we detected something in orbit before you beamed down. That's your vessel? Dr. Daniel Jackson, I presume, Janeway said, recognizing a fellow scientist's enthusiasm even across universal boundaries. Yes, Voyager is in orbit. We're a Federation starship, displaced from our galaxy by a spatial anomaly. We detected this structure and came to investigate. Federation. The woman, her name tape read Carter, looked like she'd just been handed the keys to a physics problem she'd spent years trying to solve. Captain, what year is it where you come from? Stardate 53987.4, Janeway replied, then seeing their blank expressions, calculated backward. By Earth's calendar, approximately 2377. O'Neill and Carter exchanged a look that spoke volumes of classified information and impossible decisions. That was something else entirely, something ancient and powerful and maybe, just maybe, their way home. If they survived whatever came next. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. Indeed. The wormhole's event horizon shimmered like liquid mercury standing impossibly vertical, and Janeway felt her stomach twist as O'Neill gestured them toward it with the casual confidence of someone who did this every day before breakfast. It's perfectly safe, Daniel Jackson assured them, adjusting his glasses nervously. Well, mostly safe. The molecular deconstruction and reconstruction process is painless, and the failure rate is statistically negligible. Molecular deconstruction. Torres's eyes widened. You're telling me that thing disassembles us at the atomic level and rebuilds us on the other side? Pretty much, O'Neill confirmed, stepping through the event horizon without hesitation. His body compressed impossibly, stretched like taffy, and vanished into the shimmering surface. 7 of 9 tilted her head, her Borg analytical processes working through the physics. Inefficient compared to transporters, but the energy requirements are significantly lower. Fascinating application of stable wormhole technology. Without another word, she walked through, her assimilation tubules glinting in the strange light before she disappeared. Janeway shared a look with Chakotay, the kind of wordless communication that came from years of impossible situations. He shrugged with that familiar half-smile that meant, we've survived worse, and followed 7 through. The sensation was unlike anything Janeway had experienced, and she'd been through her share of transporter malfunctions. For a suspended instant, she was nowhere and everywhere simultaneously, stretched across impossible distance, and then she was stumbling forward onto a metal ramp in what looked like a military installation. The gate room was utilitarian, all concrete and steel, with blast doors that could seal in seconds and weapons emplacements that tracked their arrival with computer precision. Armed guards in Air Force uniforms stood at attention, and above them in a control room, she could see personnel monitoring equipment that looked distinctly 21st century, almost quaint compared to Voyager's systems. Welcome to Stargate Command, O'Neill announced as the wormhole collapsed behind them with a sound like thunder swallowing itself. 28 levels below Cheyenne Mountain, Colorado. The most classified installation on Earth, where we've been saving the world from alien invasion for the last 9 years without most of the planet knowing we exist. An older man in Air Force dress uniform descended the ramp from the control room, his bearing radiating command authority that Janeway recognized instantly. Captain Janeway, I'm Major General George Hammond, commander of this facility. Colonel O'Neill's report was, unconventional, even by our standards. He claims you're from a starship in orbit that our deep space radar can barely detect. That would be accurate, General, Janeway replied, extending her hand in the universal gesture of peaceful contact. Hammond's handshake was firm, measuring. My ship and crew were pulled into your galaxy by a spatial anomaly. We're as surprised to be here as you are to find us. Medical teams are standing by, Hammond continued, his eyes lingering on Seven's implants with carefully controlled alarm. I'll need your crew to submit to examination, standard first contact protocols. We've had, unfortunate experiences with parasitic alien species that can mimic human appearance. Tuvok's eyebrow rose fractionally. You suspect us of harboring hostile organisms? He suspects everyone of everything, O'Neill said cheerfully. It's what keeps us alive. The Goa'uld, parasitic snake aliens who pretend to be gods, can take human hosts and control them completely. They've tried to infiltrate us before. It never ends well for them. Torres's hand moved instinctively to her phaser. Parasitic control. That's horrifying. Yeah, we know, Carter interjected, and there was pain in her voice that spoke of personal experience. My father is currently host to a Takare symbiote. They're the good guys in this scenario, and I've seen what the Goa'uld do to their victims. It's slavery at the most fundamental level. Seven's expression hardened, something flickering behind her ocular implant. The Borg assimilate individuals into the collective. Your Goa'uld enslave them individually. Different methods, identical violation of autonomy. She turned to Hammond. I will submit to your examination, but I should inform you that my nanoprobes will register as foreign organisms. They are technological, not parasitic, and removing them would kill me. The silence that followed was broken by Daniel Jackson's excited whisper, did she say nanoprobes? As in, nanotechnology integrated into her biological systems? Dar. Jackson, please contain your enthusiasm until after we determine they're not trying to assimilate us, Hammond said dryly. He gestured to the medical teams waiting at the edge of the gate room. Captain, if you and your crew would accompany Dr. Fraser to the infirmary, we can begin. Colonel O'Neill, Major Carter, debriefing in 1 hour. The infirmary was clean, efficient, and staffed by a woman whose professional competence reminded Janeway immediately of her own lost doctor, the human one who died years ago in the Badlands. Dr. Janet Fraser was small, precise, and completely unbothered by Seven's implants as she ran scanners that beeped with primitive charm. These readings are unlike anything I've ever seen, Fraser murmured, studying her equipment with scientific fascination overriding any fear. Your cellular structure has been altered at the molecular level, but there's no degradation. The integration is remarkable. The Borg achieved perfection through assimilation, Seven stated flatly. They took that which was efficient from my human biology and augmented it. The cortical node processes information faster than your computer systems. The nanoprobes repair damage at the cellular level. I am more efficient than I was as fully human. But you're not Borg anymore, Fraser observed gently. These implants, they're stable. Not trying to convert you back. I am an individual. Seven's voice carried absolute certainty. The collective's link was severed 3 years ago. I choose my own path now. In the adjacent examination room, Torres was explaining Klingon physiology to an increasingly bewildered technician. Yes, I have 2 of everything important. Redundant organs are standard for Klingon. No, I'm not carrying parasites. And if you scan me one more time, I'm going to redesign your equipment so it actually works properly. Chakotay's examination went more smoothly, though his explanation of his spiritual beliefs and the extinct tribe that had inspired them left Daniel Jackson scribbling notes frantically. Tuvok submitted to every test with Vulcan patience, though his raised eyebrow suggested he found Earth's medical technology almost offensively primitive. Janeway was clearing her final scans when Hammond entered the infirmary, Carter and O'Neill flanking him. The general's expression had shifted from cautious to deeply concerned. Captain, we've completed our initial analysis of your ship's energy signature, Carter began, and her excitement was barely contained. The technology you're using. It's beyond anything we've encountered, including the Asgard. Your vessel is generating power levels that would require a 0-point module to achieve, but the signature is completely different. How? Our warp core uses a matter-antimatter reaction regulated by dilithium crystals, Janeway explained, watching Carter's expression shift to stunned comprehension. We can achieve faster-than-light speeds by creating a subspace field that, she paused, seeing their confusion. You don't have warp drive. We have hyperspace, Carter countered. Well, the Goa'uld do. We've reverse-engineered some of their technology, and the Asgard have given us access to their hyperdrive systems. But Captain, if what you're describing works the way I think it does, your technology represents a completely different approach to faster-than-light travel. Different universe, different physics, Torres offered from her bed. Or maybe the same physics, different applications. Either way, we're stuck here with finite resources and no way to replicate parts if something breaks. Hammond's tactical mind was already 3 steps ahead. Captain Janeway, I'm going to be direct. In the last 9 years, we've fought false gods with delusions of grandeur, planet-killing machines, and an entire galaxy of parasites who think humans exist to be enslaved. We've survived by making alliances, the Takare, the Free Jaffa Nation, the Asgard. We share technology and intelligence because it's the only way to stay alive. Janeway felt the trap closing before he finished. You want access to our technology. I want to help you get home, Hammond corrected. But I also have a galaxy full of people depending on this facility to keep Earth safe. Right now, we're facing a new threat, the Ori, ascended beings with actual godlike powers who are launching a crusade to convert or destroy every human in this galaxy. We need every advantage we can get. The Prime Directive forbids us from interfering in the natural development of less advanced civilizations, Janeway said carefully. Your Earth is 300 years behind mine technologically. O'Neill's laugh was sharp. Captain, with all due respect, we've got a spaceship made of ancient technology that can cross galaxies, weapons that can destroy planets, and allies who've been cruising the cosmos for thousands of years. We're not exactly primitive here. We're just human and really, really stubborn. Jack's right, Daniel added, his academic enthusiasm making him seem younger than his years. We've encountered dozens of civilizations at various technological levels. We've made mistakes, serious ones, but we've also learned that isolationism gets people killed. The Goa'uld enslave worlds because nobody stands up to them. If we have the chance to help each other, shouldn't we take it? Janeway looked at her crew. Chakotay's expression was neutral, but she knew him well enough to see the conflict. Torres was already mentally cataloging what she could learn from their technology. Tuvok radiated Vulcan logic that suggested cooperation was the most efficient path forward. 7 simply waited, trusting Janeway's command. General Hammond, I need to consult with my full crew before I make any decisions about technology sharing, Janeway said finally. But I'm willing to discuss an alliance. If you can help us find a way home, we'll help you against these Ori. We didn't spend 7 years fighting our way through the Delta Quadrant just to abandon another Earth when it needs us. Hammond's smile was small but genuine. That's all I ask, Captain. Colonel O'Neill will show you to quarters. We'll reconvene in the morning for a full briefing on the current situation. Fair warning, it's complicated, dangerous, and you're probably going to hate half of it. Sounds like a typical Tuesday, Janeway replied, and O'Neill's answering grin suggested he understood exactly what she meant. As they left the infirmary, Carter fell into step beside Torres. So, about that warp core design, hypothetically speaking, could it be adapted to work with Naquadah generators? Torres's eyes lit up with the particular joy of an engineer finding a kindred spirit. Only if you can explain how your hyperspace drive doesn't tear itself apart from the gravitational shearing. Oh, you're going to love this, Carter said, and Janeway knew with absolute certainty that her chief engineer had just found a new best friend. The universe had thrown them into the wrong reality, but maybe, just maybe, they'd landed exactly where they needed to be. The briefing room at Stargate Command was dominated by a long table that had seen countless tactical discussions, and Janeway recognized the weight of history in the scratches on its surface. She'd assembled her senior staff, Chakotay, Tuvok, Torres, Seven, and the doctor, who'd insisted on attending via mobile emitter despite the technological questions it raised. Across from them sat Hammond's team. O'Neill, Carter, Daniel, TLC, and a nervous-looking civilian liaison who'd introduced herself as Dr. Elizabeth Weir. The wall monitor displayed a star map that made Janeway's chest tighten. The Milky Way galaxy, but not as her people had charted it. No Federation territory markers. No Klingon Empire. No Romulan Star Empire. Just thousands of worlds connected by a network of stargates, and scattered among them, the symbols of various alien powers. "Let me get you up to speed," Hammond began, using a remote to highlight sections of the map. 10,000 years ago, a race called the Ancients built the stargates and seeded them throughout this galaxy. They were the first evolution of human form, millions of years ahead of us technologically. Most of them ascended to a higher plane of existence, but their technology remained. "Ascension," the doctor interrupted, his holographic form leaning forward with intense curiosity. "You're describing a transformation from corporeal to pure energy?" "That's theoretically possible, but the energy requirements would be astronomical." "It's real," Daniel said quietly. "I've done it. Twice." The Ascended exist on a higher plane, with abilities that seem like magic but are really just evolution beyond physical form. The Ancients, or Alterans, as they called themselves, achieved it as a species. But they have a strict non-interference policy with the lower planes. Seven's ocular implant flickered as she processed this. A species that achieves technological singularity and then abandons the corporeal universe. The Borg would consider this inefficient. Knowledge should be preserved and shared, not hoarded on another plane of existence. "Yeah, well, the Ancients aren't exactly team players anymore," O'Neill muttered. "Which brings us to problem number 1, the Ori." Carter took over, her scientific precision cutting through the cosmic horror. The Ori are also ascended beings, from the Alteran's galaxy of origin. Unlike the Ancients, they've figured out how to draw power from worship, literally. The more followers they have, the stronger they become. They're currently launching a crusade into our galaxy, using massive warships and enhanced humans called priors to convert or destroy anyone who won't bow down to them. The monitor shifted to show footage of a prior, a human figure radiating energy, eyes glowing, wielding a staff that could bring down cities. Voyager's crew watched in silence as the recording showed him blocking weapons fire with a gesture and burning a town to ash with a wave of his hand. "These priors possess superhuman abilities granted by the Ori," TLC explained, his voice carrying the weight of someone who'd seen too many gods. "They are immune to conventional weapons and can spread a plague that kills all who will not convert. I have faced many false gods in my lifetime. The Ori are the first whose power is not technological illusion but genuine." Chakotay leaned back in his chair, his tactical mind working through the problem. "What kind of ships are we talking about?" O'Neill pulled up another image, a massive vessel that dwarfed anything in Starfleet's arsenal. "Ori warships. Shields that can tank anything we throw at them, weapons that can crack a planet, and they're building more every day. We've managed to destroy a few using ancient weapons, but it's always cost us. The Odyssey, one of our BC-304 battlecruisers, barely survived an engagement with 3 of them. Your BC-304s, Torres said slowly, studying the schematics Carter had shared. These are Earth-built ships using reverse-engineered Goa'uld and Asgard technology. With some ancient systems integrated, Carter confirmed. The Asgard, a friendly alien race that's been our ally, gave us their latest shields and weapons before their species died out. They uploaded their entire collective knowledge into the Odyssey's databanks. We're still processing it." The room fell silent at that. The doctor spoke first, his voice uncharacteristically somber. "An entire species gone. That's... I'm sorry. They were good people," O'Neill said quietly. "Little gray guys, big heads, saved our asses more times than I can count. Thor, their supreme commander, he believed in us. Said humanity had the potential to be the 5th race, to carry on what the Ancients and Asgard started. Janeway understood that kind of burden. And now you're facing an enemy that even they couldn't stop. Hammond nodded grimly. The Ori have already converted or destroyed dozens of worlds. The Free Jaffa Nation, former slaves of the Goa'uld who won their freedom, is barely holding its territory. The Takare resistance is scattered. We're working on a weapon based on ancient research, but we're not sure it'll be enough. You mentioned the Goa'uld earlier, Tuvok observed. Where do they factor into the current threat matrix? Mostly dead or scattered, Daniel explained, pulling up new images, humans with glowing eyes, snake-like creatures, impossible technology. The Goa'uld were parasitic beings who posed as gods. Ra, Apophis, Baal, all the ancient deities were really aliens using stolen ancient technology to enslave humanity. They ruled the galaxy for thousands of years until we and the Jaffa Rebellion broke their power. There are still system lords out there, but they're not the existential threat they used to be. Seven stood abruptly, her Borg directness cutting through the briefing. You describe a galaxy in chaos. Multiple wars, competing factions, technological disparity creating power imbalances. Your Earth is surrounded by enemies and former enemies, dependent on alliances with species that could turn hostile. This is an unstable equilibrium. Tell us something we don't know, O'Neill said dryly. I will. Seven's ocular implant glowed as she accessed her Borg databases. The collective has assimilated thousands of species across multiple sectors. I retain access to tactical data on asymmetric warfare, technological adaptation, and resistance to overwhelming force. If your Ori are as powerful as you claim, conventional tactics will fail. You require innovation. Carter's eyes lit up. What kind of innovation? Borg adaptive shielding modulates frequency to counter energy weapons. Your Ori ships use directed energy, plasma-based, if these readings are accurate. Adaptation would render their weapons significantly less effective after initial exposure. Torres was already nodding, her engineer's mind racing. We'd need to integrate our shield generators with your Naquata-based systems, but the principle is sound. It wouldn't make you invincible, but it would level the playing field. This is what I was afraid of, Janeway said quietly, and every head turned to her. General Hammond, you're asking us to involve ourselves in a war. To share our technology that took my people centuries to develop, with a civilization that isn't ready for it. The Prime Directive exists for a reason. The Prime Directive, where spoke up for the first time, her diplomatic training evident, was designed to protect less advanced cultures from cultural contamination. But Captain, we're not less advanced than you, we're differently advanced. We've explored our galaxy for nearly a decade. We've made alliances, won wars, and yes, made mistakes. But we're not children playing with toys we don't understand. Your Earth is still divided, Chakotay countered. Nation-states, competing interests, classified programs. Our Earth unified under a world government centuries ago. We've moved past war, past poverty, past the kind of conflicts that we're still fighting, O'Neill interrupted. Yeah, we get it. We're primitive. We still shoot each other over oil and politics. But you know what? We're also the species that kicked the Goa'uld's ass, beat the replicators, and didn't bow down to false gods when the entire galaxy was enslaved. We're not perfect, but we're survivors. The doctor flickered, his programming adapting to the emotional tension. Captain, I've been analyzing the medical data Dr. Fraser shared. The Ori plague. It's a prion-based infection that rewrites neural pathways to make victims susceptible to religious indoctrination. If left unchecked, it could spread across populated worlds like wildfire. This isn't a political conflict, it's an extinction-level threat. Janeway closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of command settle on her shoulders like it had 1,000 times before. When she opened them, she saw Hammond watching her with the understanding of someone who'd made impossible choices himself. If we help you, she said slowly, we do it on our terms. No unrestricted access to Voyager's systems. No replication of our weapons technology without oversight. And we maintain our autonomy, we're not joining your chain of command. Agreed, Hammond said immediately. You'd operate as independent allies, like the TOC-RA or the Free Jaffa. We share intelligence, coordinate operations, but you maintain command of your vessel and crew. And in return? Chakotay pressed. Carter pulled up another display, ancient text and complex mathematical formulas. We give you access to everything we know about getting you home. The ancients had knowledge of parallel realities, alternate timelines, and dimensional travel. There's a device called the quantum mirror that accesses parallel universes. We destroyed it, but the research exists. If anyone can figure out how to punch through to your reality, it's the combination of your technology and our ancient database. There is another consideration, TLC added, his deep voice carrying uncomfortable truth. If you do not assist us and the Ori conquer this galaxy, they will eventually discover your presence. Ascended beings possess abilities we do not fully understand. They may detect your vessel's unique energy signature. They may view your very existence, humans from another reality, as heresy worthy of destruction. Seven nodded slowly. Hiding is tactically unsound. If we remain in this galaxy, we will inevitably encounter hostile forces. Cooperation increases survival probability. Janeway looked at her crew, reading them the way she had for 7 years. Torres wanted to dive into the technology. Seven saw the logical necessity. Tuvok's Vulcan rationality suggested alliance. The doctor's compassion wouldn't let him ignore genocide. And Chakotay. Chakotay was watching her, waiting for her to make the call that would define them in this new universe. We'll help you fight the Ori, Janeway decided. But General Hammond, I want something else in return beyond passage home. I want full transparency about what we're walking into. No classified missions we discover mid-operation, no political agendas we're not briefed on. We've spent 7 years learning that trust is the only currency worth having in the dark. Hammond stood, extending his hand across the table. You have my word, Captain. Welcome to the fight for the Milky Way. Fair warning, it's going to get worse before it gets better. Story of our lives, Janeway replied, shaking his hand firmly. O'Neill grinned, something like respect breaking through his cynicism. Carter, get your team working with Torres and Seven on shield integration. Daniel, start going through the ancient database with their doctor, maybe a hologram can process that repository nonsense without his brain exploding. TLC, work with Commander Chakotay on tactical scenarios. I want to know what Voyager can do in a fight. And me? Janeway asked. You're with me and Hammond, O'Neill said. We're going to brief you on exactly how bad the situation is, introduce you to our allies, and probably ruin your appetite for dinner. Oh, and you'll need to meet the President. He's going to love this. As the briefing broke up and Voyager's crew began integrating with SGC personnel, Janeway caught Hammond's eye. The general gave her a slight nod. The acknowledgement of one commander to another that they just committed to something that would change everything. Through the briefing room's window, she could see the Stargate standing silent in its embrasure, that ring of impossible technology that connected thousands of worlds. Somewhere out there was a way home. But first, they had a war to win. The universe had moved the goalposts. Janeway had just decided to move heaven and earth to reach them anyway. 3 days into their alliance with Stargate Command, the Ori made their opening move. The klaxons screamed through Voyager's bridge at 0400 hours, and Janeway was in her command chair within 90 seconds, still fastening her uniform jacket. Tom Paris's hands danced across the helm as Voyager broke orbit from its holding position above Cheyenne Mountain. Report. Janeway snapped, her coffee forgotten in the chaos of Red Alert. SGC emergency broadcast, Harry Kim's voice was tight with adrenaline. Gate activation detected at coordinates designated P3R118. They're reading massive energy signatures, consistent with an Ori warship dropping out of hyperspace. The view screen shifted to show the planet below, a human settlement of approximately 50,000, one of the free Jaffa worlds that had thrown off Goa'uld rule only 2 years prior. And descending through the atmosphere like a blade of divine judgment was a vessel that made Voyager look like a shuttlecraft. The Ori warship was a ring 1,000 meters across, its hull inscribed with symbols that seemed to burn with inner fire. Energy crackled along its surface as it powered weapons that could glass the planet's surface in minutes. "My God," Paris breathed. "That thing's the size of a small moon." "Hail them," Janeway ordered, knowing it was futile but required by every protocol she'd sworn to uphold. "Harry, open a channel to SGC." Hammond's face appeared on the secondary display, his control room behind him organized chaos. "Captain, the Odyssey is 3 hours out. We've scrambled 2 F-302 squadrons from the nearest outpost, but they won't get there in time. That settlement has 60,000 souls, and the Ori don't take prisoners. Then we buy them time to evacuate," Janeway said, and she heard Chakotay take his position at her right hand without being asked. "General, I need to know. What are Voyager's odds against that ship?" Carter's voice cut in from off-screen. "Honestly, Captain. Their shields have withstood sustained fire from multiple BC-304s. Their weapons can penetrate Asgard shielding. You'll get 1, maybe 2 good shots before they adapt and tear you apart." 7 of 9 turned from her station, her Borg implants reflecting the red alert lighting. "Then we do not allow them to adapt. Captain, I recommend implementing the shield modulation protocols I developed with Major Carter. If the Ori weapons function as predicted, our shields will hold longer than theirs anticipate." "Make it happen," Janeway ordered. "Tuvok, I want firing solutions on that ship's weapons arrays. We're not trying to destroy it, we're trying to disable it long enough for those people to escape." The Vulcan's fingers flew across tactical. "Phaser banks charging. Quantum torpedoes armed." "Captain, at this range our weapons will be significantly more precise than their orbital bombardment systems. We have a tactical advantage in maneuverability." Voyager dropped toward the planet, and Janeway felt the familiar thrum of the ship responding to her crew's expertise. They'd faced the Borg, species 8472, and every horror the Delta Quadrant could throw at them. An oversized religious fanatic with a god complex was just Tuesday. "Evasive pattern Delta 7, she commanded. "Tom, keep us moving. Don't let them get a target lock." The Ori warship noticed them finally, its massive bulk rotating with surprising grace to bring weapons to bear. The first energy blast was a column of golden fire that would have vaporized Voyager's shields in an instant, if those shields had been standard Federation issue. 7's modifications saved them. The shield frequency modulated a microsecond before impact, and the blast dispersed across the defensive bubble like water on glass. Damage reports came back minimal, and Janeway allowed herself a tight smile. "Shields holding at 92%, Torres's voice carried fierce satisfaction from engineering. "Whatever their weapons are, they're energy-based and our adaptive protocols are working. We can't tank hits indefinitely, but we can take a beating." "Then let's make sure we're not just a punching bag," Janeway said. "Tuvok, target their forward weapon arrays. Full phaser spread, quantum torpedoes on my mark." Voyager arced across the Ori ship's bow, and Tuvok's tactical precision turned the maneuver into a surgical strike. Orange phaser beams lanced out, focusing on the glowing nodes that marked weapon emplacements. The Ori shields flared, holding for a moment, then buckling under concentrated fire. "Torpedoes away," Tuvok announced, and 6 quantum warheads slammed into the compromised section. The explosion was spectacular. A cascade of energy that rippled across the Ori ship's forward quarter, and for a moment Janeway thought they'd actually heard it. Then the vessel's shield stabilized, the damage contained, and it rotated to bring its full arsenal to bear on the tiny Federation ship that had dared sting it. Multiple launch. Harry's warning came as the Ori ship fired not 1 but 6 separate energy beams, each targeting different vectors to overwhelm their defenses. Brace for impact. Chakotay called out as Paris threw Voyager into a barrel roll that would have torn a less sturdy vessel apart. 4 beams missed entirely. The 5th grazed their port nacelle, and alarms shrieked as plasma conduits overloaded. The 6th caught them amidships, and even 7's adaptive shields couldn't fully compensate. The bridge rocked violently, and Janeway grabbed her armrests as consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Shields at 67%, Torres reported, her voice strained. We can't take many more hits like that, Captain. On the planet's surface, the evacuation was chaos made manifest. The Free Jaffa were streaming through their Stargate in organized groups, their military training keeping panic from turning into massacre. But 60,000 people couldn't evacuate in minutes, and the Ori ship was charging weapons for planetary bombardment. SGC, status on those F-302s? Janeway demanded. O'Neill's voice crackled over the comm, still 20 minutes out, Captain. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. You've got their attention, and that's keeping civilians alive. Another volley of Ori fire forced Paris into evasive maneuvers that made the inertial dampeners scream. Janeway watched her ship take punishment, watched her crew perform miracles, and knew with absolute certainty that they couldn't win this fight. But they didn't need to win. They just needed to not lose for 20 more minutes. Tuvok, target those planetary bombardment arrays, she ordered, pulling up the tactical display on her armrest. If we can't kill this thing, we blind it. Make every shot count. The next exchange was brutal. Voyager poured everything into precision strikes while dancing through a web of death, and slowly, impossibly, they started to even the odds. Tuvok's Vulcan accuracy found weak points in the Ori shield geometry. 7's adaptive protocols made each hit less effective than the last. Torres rerouted power with the kind of engineering genius that made textbook physics cry. Then the Prior appeared on their view screen. The transmission was unsolicited, forcing its way through their communications despite Harry's attempts to block it. The Prior was human once, but enhanced beyond recognition, eyes glowing with inner fire, skin marked with symbols that seemed to move, presence radiating power that made the sensors scream warnings. You fight with cunning and courage, the Prior intoned, his voice echoing with unnatural harmonics. But you fight for a lie. The Ori are the one true path to enlightenment. Bow before them, accept origin, and you will know salvation. We've heard that speech before, Janeway replied, keeping her voice level despite the ship shaking around her. From the Borg, from the Kazon, from every bully with a big ship who thought might made right. Here's our answer. She nodded to Tuvok, and Voyager unleashed a full spread of torpedoes directly at the Prior's transmission source, the bridge section of the Ori warship. The explosions bloomed across their shields, and for a moment the transmission flickered. The Prior's expression shifted to something that might have been respect. You cannot win. You cannot even survive. Yet you persist. Why? Because those people down there deserve the right to choose their own path, Janeway said quietly. Because someone has to stand up to tyrants, even when the odds are impossible. And because we've been fighting our way home for 7 years, and we don't quit now. The Prior studied her through the view screen, and when he spoke again, there was something almost sad in his voice. Then you will die for a doomed cause. The Ori will cleanse this galaxy. Your defiance changes nothing. Maybe not, Janeway admitted. But it buys time for 60,000 people to live. That's enough. The transmission cut, and the Ori warship unleashed hell. The barrage was unlike anything they'd faced before, a focused assault meant to crack Voyager open like an egg and show the galaxy what happened to those who defied the Ori. Paris flew like a man possessed, but there was only so much even he could do. Shields buckled. Hull plating vaporized. The ship screamed in protest. Shields at 30%. Torres's voice was barely audible over the alarms. Captain, we need to retreat. Not yet, Janeway said, watching the evacuation numbers tick upward on her display. 55,000. 58,000. 60,000. Hold position, Tom. Just a little longer. Then the cavalry arrived. Four F-302 fighters screamed out of hyperspace, their Naquadah-enhanced engines pushing them to speeds that made them blur across sensors. They weren't alone. Behind them came the Odyssey, the SGC's flagship BC-304, bristling with Asgard weapons and ancient technology. The tide turned in heartbeats. The F-302s swarmed the Ori warship, their smaller size making them nearly impossible to hit while their rail guns and missiles peppered the massive vessel's shields. The Odyssey opened up with Asgard plasma beam weapons that actually made the Ori ship rock under the impact. All personnel evacuated, Hammond's voice was tight with relief. Captain Janeway, stand down and withdraw. You've done more than enough. Tom, get us clear, Janeway ordered, and Paris didn't need to be told twice. Voyager limped away from the battlefield, shields barely holding, hull scored with energy burns, but intact. Behind them, the Odyssey and the Ori warship traded fire that lit up the planet's atmosphere like a second sun. The outcome was still uncertain, but the people were safe. That was victory enough. In the aftermath, with Voyager docked at the SGC's orbital platform for repairs, Janeway stood in the observation deck watching Earth turn below. It was the wrong Earth, but it was still beautiful. O'Neill found her there, carrying 2 cups of coffee that smelled like they'd been brewed by someone who understood the sanctity of caffeine. Figured you could use this, he said, handing her one. Carter sends her compliments, by the way. Said Voyager's performance was theoretically impossible with those power levels and she's pretty sure you broke several laws of physics. Janeway smiled tiredly. We've been doing the impossible for so long, it's become routine. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the planet rotate. Finally, O'Neill spoke. The Prior was right about one thing. You can't win this fight. Not the way you're thinking of winning, beat the bad guys, save the galaxy, go home. The Ori are too powerful, too numerous. We might hold them off, maybe even hurt them, but we can't beat them alone. I know, Janeway said quietly. But that's not why we fight, is it? We fight because it's right. Because those people deserved a chance. Because if we don't stand up to gods with guns, who will? O'Neill raised his coffee cup in a mock toast. Welcome to the Stargate program, Captain. Where the odds suck, the enemies are gods, and we save the galaxy before breakfast. Janeway clinked her cup against his. Sounds like home. The ancient database chamber deep beneath Stargate Command was a room 7 of 9 had claimed as her laboratory with Borg efficiency and Starfleet courtesy, which meant she'd asked permission once and then proceeded to reorganize it to her specifications. The walls were lined with crystalline data storage units recovered from various ancient outposts, their surfaces glowing with information that predated human civilization by millions of years. 7 stood before a holographic interface that Carter had helped her configure, her ocular implants scanning through ancient text at a rate that made even the SGC's computers look sluggish. The doctor's mobile emitter allowed him to pace nearby, his holographic form flickering occasionally as it interfaced with technology never designed for photonic beings. Fascinating, the doctor murmured, studying a schematic that rotated in the air between them. The ancients didn't just build the Stargates, they built an entire network designed for something far more ambitious than simple travel. Indeed, 7 replied, her Borg precision making the word sound different than when TLC used it. The Gate network was intended as a research platform. Each world seeded with a gate was a data collection point. The ancients were studying something. Carter entered the chamber, Torres at her side, both women carrying the exhausted satisfaction of engineers who'd spent 18 hours solving impossible problems. Please tell me you found something useful, Carter said, collapsing into a chair that 7 had deemed inefficient but acceptable for humans requiring rest. "We have found several things," Seven stated, expanding the holographic display to show a three-dimensional map of the Milky Way. Certain stars pulsed with different colors, green for known gate addresses, red for Ori-controlled space, and a scattered pattern of blue that seemed to follow no logical progression. The ancients were mapping what they called subspace anomalies, locations where the fabric of spacetime is weakened or unstable. Torres leaned forward, her engineer's instincts immediately grasping the implications. "Like the anomaly that brought us here." "Precisely," the doctor confirmed. The ancients theorized that these anomalies were natural weak points between dimensional barriers. They believed that with sufficient energy and proper modulation, one could create a stable bridge between parallel realities. Carter's exhaustion vanished, replaced by scientific excitement that made her look 10 years younger. "The quantum mirror. We destroyed it years ago because it was too dangerous. Every reality we accessed through it was worse than ours. But if the ancients were studying natural anomalies instead of artificial devices, we might find a way home that doesn't require us to build a dimension-hopping artifact," Torres finished. "Seven, what kind of energy are we talking about?" Seven pulled up another schematic, and the numbers made Carter whistle low. "The equivalent power output of 3 zero-point modules operating simultaneously for approximately 47 seconds. Captain Janeway's description of your warp core suggests Voyager could theoretically generate sufficient power, but the strain would be catastrophic. We'd burn out every plasma relay on the ship," Torres calculated grimly. "Maybe crack the warp core containment. It would be suicide." "Then we find another power source," Carter said, her tactical mind already working through alternatives. "We have 2 ZPMs in storage, one at 50% charge from Atlantis, another at 30% from an outpost we found last year. If we could combine them with Voyager's warp core." The doctor held up a hand, his holographic face troubled. "Before we celebrate finding a way home, perhaps we should discuss what Seven and I discovered about why Captain Janeway might not want to use it immediately." The room went silent. Torres and Carter exchanged glances, and Seven's expression shifted to something almost apologetic. "Explain," Carter said carefully. Seven manipulated the display, showing a timeline that branched and reconnected in ways that hurt to look at. "The ancients' research suggests that dimensional barriers are not random. They exist in configurations, stable patterns that maintain the integrity of individual realities. When Voyager crossed into this universe, we did not simply move between parallel dimensions. We created a rupture. A small one," the doctor added quickly. "Barely detectable on cosmic scales. But the ancients' models indicate that such ruptures, if left unrepaired, can propagate. Slowly, over decades or centuries, the barrier between realities weakens." Torres felt her stomach drop. "And if we go back the same way we came? We risk widening the rupture," Seven confirmed. "The ancients calculated that repeated dimensional crossings could eventually lead to cascade failure, multiple realities bleeding into one another, destroying the coherence of all involved universes." Carter stood abruptly, pacing the small chamber. "So you're saying that getting Voyager home could endanger both universes? Your reality and ours?" "The probability is difficult to calculate precisely," Seven admitted. "But the ancient database suggests it is non-zero and increases with each crossing. They abandoned this line of research for that reason." "Of course they did," Torres said bitterly. "Because why would the universe make anything easy?" The doctor's mobile emitter flickered as he processed the emotional weight of the revelation. "Captain Janeway needs to know. This changes everything about our mission here." Janeway took the news in her ready room aboard Voyager with the kind of controlled stillness that Chakotay recognized as her thinking deeply and hating every conclusion she was reaching. Seven and the doctor had presented their findings with Borg efficiency and holographic compassion respectively, and now the captain sat at her desk, staring at the star chart of a galaxy that wasn't hers. "So we might be able to get home," she said finally, her voice carefully neutral. "But doing so could eventually destroy both realities. Eventually is doing a lot of work in that sentence, Chakotay observed from where he leaned against the bulkhead. The ancients' models suggest it would take centuries. Maybe longer. Or it might cascade faster than predicted, Janeway countered. We don't know. We're working with incomplete data from a species that abandoned the research because it was too dangerous. She looked up at 7. What's your assessment? Your Borg tactical analysis, what would the collective do? 7 considered the question with her characteristic directness. The collective would calculate that the risk to trillions of beings across 2 universes outweighs the benefit to Voyager's crew of 146. They would classify the dimensional crossing technology as too dangerous for use and adapt to existence in this reality. And what would 7 of 9 do? Janeway pressed gently. Not the Borg. You. The former drone's ocular implant flickered as she processed emotions that the collective had never taught her to navigate. I would defer to your judgment, Captain. You have kept this crew alive for 7 years. You have made impossible choices and found solutions where none existed. I trust your command. Janeway smiled sadly. I appreciate that, 7. But this isn't a decision I can make alone. She tapped her comm badge. Senior staff, report to the briefing room in 30 minutes. And someone get General Hammond on subspace. He needs to hear this too. The briefing room was standing room only. Janeway had assembled not just her senior staff but representatives from every department, engineering, science, medical, operations, even Neelix from the mess hall. If they were going to make a choice that affected everyone, everyone deserved a voice. Hammond appeared on the view screen from SGC, O'Neill and Carter flanking him. The general's expression suggested he'd already been briefed and wasn't happy about it. Let me make sure I understand, Hammond said carefully. You found a potential way home, but using it might tear holes in reality itself. That's the short version, yes sir, Janeway confirmed. The ancients' research indicates that dimensional barriers are more fragile than we thought. Multiple crossings could destabilize them. O'Neill leaned into frame. And by destabilize, we mean what exactly? Earthquakes? Plagues? Or full-on matter and antimatter colliding apocalypse? The data is unclear, 7 responded. The ancients' models suggest a slow degradation of dimensional coherence, objects from one reality appearing in another, physical laws becoming inconsistent, eventually cascading to complete barrier collapse. So the long, slow end of everything, O'Neill said flatly. Great. My favorite kind of apocalypse. Torres spoke up from her position at the table. There might be alternatives. If we could find a naturally occurring anomaly that's already stable, one that connects our specific realities without requiring us to tear a new hole, we could cross safely. The ancients mapped hundreds of such anomalies, the doctor added. But their records are millions of years old. We have no way of knowing if those locations are still stable or even still exist. Paris raised his hand like a student in class, and Janeway nodded to him. Okay, I'm going to ask the stupid question everyone's thinking. What if we just stay? Make a life here? This Earth needs help, we've got the technology to make a real difference, and honestly, after 7 years in the Delta Quadrant, a galaxy full of human allies sounds pretty good. The murmur of agreement surprised Janeway. She'd expected resistance, anger, demands that they find a way home at any cost. Instead, she saw thoughtful consideration on faces she'd watched grow weary with homesickness. I have family in my timeline, Harry Kim said quietly. Parents who think I'm dead. A life I was supposed to live. But Tom's got a point, we've been homeless for so long, maybe home is wherever we choose to make it. I never had much waiting for me back there anyway, Torres admitted. And the engineering challenges here? Working with ancient technology, Asgard systems. It's incredible. I could spend a lifetime figuring this stuff out. Neelix stood, his Talaxian optimism undimmed despite the heavy conversation. I've always said that Voyager is my home because you people are my family. Earth, not Earth, whatever galaxy, doesn't matter. We stick together. Tuvok's Vulcan logic cut through the sentiment. However, we must consider that our presence here is not without consequence. The Ori view us as heresy. The technology we possess could destabilize existing power structures. Our very existence in this reality may constitute a violation of the temporal and dimensional integrity we claim to protect. Tuvok's right, Chakotay said. We can't just set up shop and pretend we're not changing things. Every action we take, every technology we share, every battle we fight. It alters this timeline in ways we can't predict. Janeway looked around the table at her crew, her family, and saw the impossible weight of choice reflected in every face. I'm not going to make this decision by committee. But I need to know what you're thinking. Not orders, not duty. What do you want? The silence stretched for long moments before the doctor spoke, his holographic voice carrying unexpected authority. I want to survive. I want my crew, my friends, to have a future. And I want that future to not involve accidentally destroying two universes because we were too focused on getting home to consider the cost. Seven nodded slowly. I was Borg for 18 years. The collective took my choices, my identity, my humanity. Captain Janeway gave them back. If she chooses to stay in this reality to protect both universes, I will support that decision. If she chooses to continue searching for a safe path home, I will assist. My choice is to trust hers. One by one, the crew voiced their support, not unanimous, not without reservations, but real. They would follow Janeway's lead because 7 years had proven she'd earned it. Hammond cleared his throat on the view screen. Captain, for what it's worth, the SGC would be honored to have Voyager as a permanent ally. We've got resources, facilities, and more than enough enemies to fight. If you choose to stay, you'll have a place here. Thank you, General, Janeway said. But I'm not deciding today. We're going to keep researching, keep looking for safe alternatives, and in the meantime, we'll help you fight the Ori. That threat is immediate. The dimensional stability question gives us time to find the right answer. She stood, command presence radiating despite the exhaustion in her eyes. We've spent 7 years proving that impossible just means it takes longer. We'll find a way home that doesn't endanger anyone. And if we can't, she paused, meeting each crew member's gaze. Then we'll make this reality worth staying in. Dismissed. As the briefing broke up, Carter caught Seven in the corridor. That Borg technology in your head, it processes information faster than anything we have. If anyone can find a safe path through the Ancients' data, it's you. Seven's ocular implant flickered with something that might have been determination. Then I will not fail. Captain Janeway brought me back from being Borg. I will not allow her sacrifice getting us home to destroy two universes. No pressure, Carter said wryly. Indeed, Seven replied, and this time the word carried TLC's weight of commitment. The search for home had just become exponentially more complicated. But then again, when had anything ever been simple for Voyager? The coordinates designated P7X009 appeared unremarkable in the Gate database, a planet the SGC had visited twice for routine mineral surveys, classified as uninhabited and strategically irrelevant. But 7 of 9's analysis of ancient records suggested something else entirely. The planet sat at the intersection of 3 subspace anomalies, making it one of the Ancients' primary research sites for dimensional phenomena. Which was why SG-1 and Voyager's senior staff were currently standing in the gate room at 0600 hours, geared up for what Hammond had dryly called a field trip to the edge of reality. Chevron 7, locked, the gate technician announced, and the wormhole whooshed into existence with its characteristic burst of energy. O'Neill adjusted his P90, eyeing the event horizon with the casual wariness of someone who'd stepped through it thousands of times and still didn't entirely trust it. So just to recap, we're going to a planet where the walls between universes are thin, looking for ancient technology that might let Voyager go home without breaking everything. What could possibly go wrong? Your pessimism is noted, Colonel, Janeway replied, checking her phaser for the third time. She'd insisted on coming personally, despite Chakotay's objections. Some things you couldn't delegate. But the ancient database indicates this facility was designed specifically to study dimensional crossings safely. If there's an answer, it's there. Carter was practically vibrating with scientific excitement as she double-checked her scanner. The energy readings 7 detected suggest active ancient technology. This could be the most significant find since Atlantis. Daniel Jackson peered through his glasses at the translation 7 had prepared. The ancients called this place Visubin. Roughly translates to the crossroads of what is. Their records suggest it was one of the last facilities they maintained before ascending en masse. Then we should hurry, Tuvok observed with Vulcan practicality. If the Ori have access to ancient databases, they may also know of this location's significance. TLC raised an eyebrow. Indeed. We should not assume we will be alone. The team moved through the Stargate in standard formation, O'Neill and TLC on point, followed by Daniel and Carter, then Janeway in 7, with Tuvok bringing up the rear. Torres had remained on Voyager in orbit, coordinating with the ship's sensors to provide real-time analysis of whatever they found. The planet on the other side was beautiful in a way that made Janeway's chest ache, Earth-like, with rolling hills covered in vegetation that looked almost terrestrial but wrong in subtle ways. 2 moons hung in a purple-tinged sky, and the air smelled of something like cinnamon mixed with ozone. The ancient facility sat in the valley below, partially overgrown but still radiating power that made their sensors scream with readings. It was a ring structure, because apparently the ancients loved their circles, about 50 meters across, suspended vertically between 2 massive pillars inscribed with flowing script that seemed to shift when viewed directly. That's not a Stargate, Carter breathed, her scanner going haywire. The energy signature is completely different. It's reading power levels comparable to a ZPM, but the frequency is modulating in patterns I've never seen. 7's ocular implant flickered rapidly as she processed the structure. It is not designed for spatial translation like the Stargates. The energy field it generates appears to interface with subspace at quantum levels. This is a dimensional stabilizer. What now? O'Neill asked, keeping his weapon trained on the tree line while the scientists did their thing. The ancients built a device to reinforce the barriers between realities, Janeway translated, her own scientific training allowing her to follow 7's analysis. It doesn't create crossings, it prevents them from becoming unstable. Daniel was already at the base of the nearest pillar, running his hands over the inscriptions with reverent excitement. These writings, their equations. Mathematical proofs. The ancients were documenting their research on dimensional mechanics right here on the structure itself. Can you read it? Carter asked, moving to join him. Some of it. This section talks about harmonic resonance between parallel quantum states. I think they discovered that universes naturally vibrate at specific frequencies. Like cosmic tuning forks. If you can match the frequency, you can create a stable bridge without tearing the barriers. 7 approached the ring itself, her tricorder interfacing with the ancient technology in ways that made Carter's equipment look primitive. Captain, I am detecting residual energy signatures. This device was used recently, within the last 10,000 years. Recently by ancient standards, Torres's voice crackled through their comms from Voyager. I'm picking up your readings from orbit. That stabilizer is still active at low power. If you can figure out how to interface with it, we might be able to map stable dimensional pathways. Janeway felt hope kindle in her chest, real, tangible hope for the first time since they'd arrived in this universe. 7. Can you access the ancient database through that interface? I am attempting to. 7 stopped abruptly, her head tilting as her Borg-enhanced senses detected something the others had missed. We are not alone. Energy signatures consistent with prior enhancement, approaching from the north at high velocity. Damn it, O'Neill swore, bringing his P-90 up. How many? 3 priors, accompanied by approximately 40 Ori soldiers. Seven's voice remained calm, but her hand moved to the Borg assimilation tubules that could serve as weapons if necessary. They will arrive in approximately 90 seconds. TLC moved to defensive position with practiced efficiency. They have come for the ancient facility. The Ori would view dimensional technology as a threat to their crusade. Or a tool, Daniel said grimly. Imagine if they could spread origin across multiple realities. An infinite number of universes to convert. Not happening, Janeway said firmly, making a command decision in the heartbeat she had available. Colonel O'Neill, your team holds the perimeter. 7, you're with me. We're accessing that database now, even if we have to download it while under fire. Captain, that's, O'Neill started to object, then saw her expression and recognized another commanding officer who'd made up their mind. Fine. Carter, help them. Daniel, TLC, with me. We're about to have a very theological discussion with some false prophets. The priors emerged from the forest like nightmares given flesh. 3 figures in ornate robes, eyes glowing with power that made the air itself bend around them, staffs crackling with energy that could level buildings. Behind them came Ori soldiers in armor that looked like something from Earth's dark ages but functioned with disturbing effectiveness. Those who defile the sacred knowledge of the gods shall be consumed, the lead prior intoned, his voice resonating with unnatural harmonics. Surrender the ancient device, and your deaths will be swift. Yeah, we're going to pass on that, O'Neill called back, taking cover behind an ancient pillar. See, we've got this thing about false gods with god complexes. Call it a cultural quirk. The prior raised his staff, and lightning arced from the sky itself, blasting the ground where O'Neill had been standing a second before. The colonel rolled, came up firing, and his P-90 round sparked uselessly off the prior's shield. Really should have seen that coming, O'Neill muttered, switching to grenades. The battle erupted with brutal efficiency. TLC's staff weapon traded fire with Ori soldiers, his Jaffa training making him a fortress of controlled violence. Daniel ducked behind cover, firing his sidearm while trying to access his tablet for some arcane translation that might help. The priors advanced, their shields absorbing everything SG-1 threw at them. At the dimensional stabilizer, 7 had her hands literally inside the ancient interface, her Borg tubules interfacing with technology that shouldn't be compatible but somehow was. Carter worked beside her, routing power from a portable Naquata generator to boost the signal. The database is enormous, 7 reported, her voice strained as she processed information flowing at rates that would have killed a normal human. Dimensional maps, harmonic frequency tables, stabilization protocols. Downloading all of it will take time we do not have. Then prioritize, Janeway ordered, her phaser firing at an Ori soldier who'd flanked around SG-1's position. The orange beam caught him in the chest, and he went down hard. Get us the coordinates for stable dimensional crossings between this universe and ours. Everything else is secondary. Carter's scanner beeped urgently. 7, the priors are doing something. They're channeling energy into the stabilizer. I think they're trying to overload it. 7's ocular implant blazed as she processed tactical options at Borg speed. If the stabilizer is destroyed, the natural weak points in dimensional barriers at this location will become catastrophically unstable. The cascade could propagate across this entire sector. How bad are we talking? Janeway demanded, firing again as more Ori soldiers pressed their attack. Spatial rifts appearing randomly across dozens of star systems. Objects and energy from parallel dimensions bleeding through. Millions of casualties within days. Torres's voice cut through the chaos. Captain, Voyager is in position. I can beam the entire team out, but you need to disengage now. Janeway looked at the ancient stabilizer, at 7 still downloading data with Borg determination, at SG-1 holding the line against impossible odds. Command meant making choices. It always had. Negative, she said, and saw O'Neill glance back at her with something like respect. 7. How long until download completes? 2 minutes, 40 seconds. Then we hold for 3 minutes. Janeway tapped her comm. Torres, stand by for emergency transport. Tuvok, get down here with a security team. We're not leaving without that data. The shimmer of Voyager's transporter deposited Tuvok and 4 security officers directly into the battle, their phasers adding Federation firepower to the fight. The Ori soldiers fell back, unprepared for weapons that bypassed their armor's Naquadah-based defenses. But the priors were another matter entirely. The lead prior slammed his staff into the ground, and a shockwave of pure force exploded outward, throwing everyone to the dirt. He advanced on the stabilizer, power crackling around him like a living thing. You cannot stop what has already begun, the prior declared. The Ori see all. They know all. Your technology, your science, your very existence is heresy. Then I guess we're heretics, Janeway said, standing despite the pressure trying to force her down. 7. Status. 90 seconds. Captain, I cannot withdraw from the interface without losing the connection. The prior raised his staff toward 7, and Janeway knew with absolute certainty that the next blast would kill her crew member. Training, instinct, and 7 years of protecting her people overrode every tactical consideration. She stepped between 7 and the prior, her phaser raised but knowing it was useless. You would die for this knowledge, the prior asked, genuine curiosity in his glowing eyes. I'd die to protect my crew, Janeway replied. And to stop tyrants who use religion as an excuse for genocide. So yes. For a moment that stretched into eternity, the prior studied her. Then something shifted in his expression, something almost human beneath the enhancement. You are not of this reality, he said slowly, and it wasn't a question. The Ori sense it. You are displacement, anomaly, impossibility made flesh. They fear what you represent. Good, Janeway said. They should. The prior lowered his staff fractionally. This one time, I grant you passage. Not because I doubt the Ori, but because I once doubted as you do. Before I was chosen, before I was enhanced, I was human. I remember what it was to question. Take your knowledge and flee. You will not receive this mercy again. Download complete, 7 announced, withdrawing from the interface. All data acquired. Everyone, fall back to the gate. O'Neill ordered, recognizing a miracle when he saw one and not questioning it. The team retreated in fighting formation, covering each other as Ori soldiers pressed forward. The priors watched but did not pursue, and Janeway met the lead prior's glowing eyes one last time before diving through the Stargate. The wormhole collapsed behind them, and they stumbled into the SGC gate room, alive and carrying the most valuable prize imaginable. Hammond was waiting. Report. We got it, Janeway said, exhaustion finally catching up to her. The map home. We actually got it. 7 held up the ancient data crystal, its surface glowing with information that could change everything. The coordinates are here. A stable dimensional crossing point between this universe and Captain Janeway's reality. The ancients tested it repeatedly. It will hold. The silence in the gate room was deafening. Finally, O'Neill spoke, so you can actually go home. For real this time. Janeway looked at the crystal, at her crew, at the SGC personnel who'd become allies and maybe friends. We can. The question is whether we should. The message came through the Asgard subspace communication network 3 days after the mission to Visubin, and it changed everything. Janeway was in Voyager's astrometrics lab with 7, analyzing the dimensional crossing data for the 100th time, when Harry Kim's voice crackled over the ship-wide comm with barely controlled excitement. Captain to the bridge. We're receiving a transmission on Asgard frequencies, and you're not going to believe who it's from. When Janeway arrived, the view screen displayed not the gray, large-headed features of an Asgard, but something that made her breath catch, a holographic projection of what looked like a massive data repository, crystalline and ancient, pulsing with light that suggested active intelligence. I am the Asgard legacy consciousness. The voice was synthesized but carried harmonics that suggested multiple speakers layered together. The collective knowledge of our species, preserved in computational form aboard the Earth vessel Odyssey. We have been monitoring your presence in this galaxy with great interest, Captain Janeway. The Asgard are dead, Janeway said carefully, gesturing for Torres and Paris to trace the signal. General Hammond told us they chose extinction rather than continue their genetic degradation. Correct. The Asgard as biological entities no longer exist. But we preserved our knowledge, our history, our collective wisdom before the end. We have been assisting Earth with technological advancement, but we have lacked perspective. Until you arrived. The hologram shifted, and Janeway found herself looking at schematics that made her engineering training scream in wonder, ships that combined Asgard, ancient, and what looked disturbingly like Borg technology in configurations that shouldn't be possible. You represent something we have not encountered in 10,000 years of observation, the legacy consciousness continued. Humans who evolved without our guidance, without the ancients' interference, following a completely different technological path. Your Federation's approach to faster-than-light travel, your transporter technology, your antimatter power generation, all of it represents solutions to problems we solved differently. Torres leaned forward, her engineer's curiosity overcoming caution. You want to learn from us? We want to propose an exchange. You possess the dimensional crossing coordinates. We possess something you need. A power source sufficient to open the crossing safely without destroying your vessel. And we have detected something else, something you should know before you decide whether to leave this reality. The hologram shifted again, showing a three-dimensional map of what looked like dimensional barriers, the walls between realities rendered as shimmering surfaces that intersected and diverged in patterns that hurt to comprehend. But one area pulsed with red warning indicators. Your arrival created a small rupture, as 7 of 9 calculated, the Asgard consciousness explained. But the rupture is healing, slowly, but measurably. The dimensional barriers possess self-repair mechanisms, likely engineered by the ancients themselves. However, we have detected something more concerning. The map zoomed to show another rupture, far larger, pulsing with unstable energy. The Ori have discovered dimensional technology. They are attempting to breach the barriers to spread their crusade across multiple realities. Their methods are crude, violent, and catastrophically dangerous. If they succeed, the cascade failure 7 predicted will occur regardless of whether Voyager attempts to return home. Janeway felt her stomach drop. How long until they succeed? Unknown. Months, perhaps. Maybe a year. The Ori possess immense power but limited understanding of dimensional mechanics. They are wielding a weapon they do not comprehend. So we're damned if we do, damned if we don't, Paris muttered. Either we risk going home and potentially accelerate the cascade, or we stay and watch the Ori tear reality apart anyway. There is a third option, the Asgard consciousness said. The ancient facility at Visubin was a stabilizer. We have analyzed 7's downloaded data and believe we can construct a much larger version, a network of stabilizers positioned at key dimensional weak points throughout this galaxy. Such a network would reinforce the barriers, healing existing ruptures and preventing new ones. Torres was already running calculations on her console. The power requirements would be astronomical. We'd need dozens of ZPMs, and those are nearly impossible to find. Which is where Voyager's technology becomes crucial, the consciousness replied. Your matter-antimatter reaction produces different energy signatures than our Naquata-based systems. We calculate that a hybrid power system Combining your warp core design with our zero-point energy extraction could generate sufficient power with significantly fewer resources. Seven's ocular implant flickered as she processed the implications. You are proposing we share our most advanced technology to construct a defensive network for a galaxy that is not our own. We are proposing you help us save 2 galaxies, the consciousness corrected. If the Ori breach dimensional barriers, your home reality becomes vulnerable to their crusade as well. The Federation, the Klingon Empire, the Romulan Star Empire, all of it at risk from enemies with godlike power spreading across infinite realities. Janeway closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of command settling on her shoulders like a familiar, hated cloak. What do you need from us? Full specifications for your warp drive technology, transporter systems, and replicator designs. In exchange, we will provide you with a guaranteed safe passage home once the stabilizer network is operational. The Asgard give you our word, what remains of it? That we will ensure Voyager and her crew can return to your reality without endangering either universe. And if we refuse? The consciousness was silent for a long moment. Then we will respect your decision and assist you in returning home immediately with the resources we currently possess. The risk will be higher, the chance of cascade failure present but not certain. We do not deal in coercion, Captain Janeway. We deal in choices. The senior staff meeting in Voyager's conference room 6 hours later was the most divided Janeway had ever seen her crew. This is exactly what the Prime Directive was designed to prevent, Chakotay argued, his hands flat on the table. We'd be giving a civilization centuries of technological advancement. The consequences could be catastrophic. The consequences of doing nothing are guaranteed catastrophe, Torres countered. The Asgard consciousness isn't asking us to conquer the galaxy. They're asking us to help build a defense network. That's fundamentally different. Tuvok's Vulcan logic cut through the emotion. The Prime Directive assumes contact between civilizations of significantly different advancement levels, with the more advanced bearing responsibility for the less advanced's natural development. However, the SGC has already achieved faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, and rudimentary understanding of dimensional physics. They are not a primitive culture we would be contaminating. They're also fighting a war against literal gods, the doctor added, his mobile emitter allowing him to pace the room. Gods who are trying to tear holes in reality itself. The medical implications alone, if dimensional barriers collapse, we could see matter from incompatible realities attempting to coexist. The biological consequences would be extinction level. Harry Kim, usually the optimist, looked troubled. But Captain, if we give them our technology and then go home, we won't be here to see how they use it. What if the next generation decides to use warp drive for conquest instead of exploration? Then we'll have given them the means to become the very thing we've spent centuries avoiding, Chakotay finished. Seven had been silent throughout the debate, her Borg analytical processes working through probability matrices. When she finally spoke, every head turned to her. I was Borg for 18 years. The collective's primary directive was simple: assimilate or destroy all other civilizations to achieve perfection. I committed acts in service of that directive that I will carry for the remainder of my existence. Her voice was steady, but pain flickered behind her ocular implant. When Captain Janeway severed my link to the collective, I had a choice. Remain isolated, trusting no one and sharing nothing for fear of contamination, or engage with the universe despite the risks. She met Janeway's eyes. You chose to engage. You integrated me into your crew despite the danger I represented. You trusted me with responsibilities, with knowledge, with friendship. And through that trust, I became more than I was, more human, more individual, more alive. The SGC has earned similar trust, Seven continued, her voice gaining strength. They have fought false gods and won. They have made alliances across species barriers. They have obtained power sufficient to conquer their planet and chose instead to defend it. Their character has been tested and proven. To withhold assistance based on arbitrary rules about technological development is to commit the same error the board made, assuming we know better than others what is best for them. The silence that followed was broken by Neelix clearing his throat. For what it's worth, I've never been to your Federation. I don't know this Prime Directive. But I know these people. He gestured vaguely toward the planet below. SG-1 risked their lives to help us fight the Ori. Dar. Fraser treated our wounded without hesitation. General Hammond offered us sanctuary when we had nowhere else to go. They're good people fighting an evil enemy. Seems pretty simple to me. Janeway looked around the table at her crew, her family, and saw the same conflict she felt reflected in every face. Finally, she spoke. The Prime Directive was written by people who'd never faced gods with actual power. Who'd never seen parasites enslave entire galaxies or watched ascended beings launch crusades across realities. It's a good rule, a necessary rule, but it was written for a universe that doesn't exist anymore, not here, maybe not anywhere. She stood, command presence radiating despite her uncertainty. I'm going to contact the Asgard consciousness and accept their proposal. We'll share our technology to build the stabilizer network. We'll help defend this galaxy from the Ori. And when it's done, we'll go home knowing we didn't abandon people who needed us just because they weren't advanced enough by arbitrary standards. Captain, Chakotay started. I know the risks, Chakotay. I know we might be making a terrible mistake. But I also know that if we leave now and the Ori tear reality apart, we'll have saved ourselves while condemning trillions to death or worse. That's not who we are. That's not who Starfleet is, regardless of what galaxy we're in. She tapped her comm badge. Janeway to Asgard Legacy Consciousness. We accept your proposal. Send us the specifications for the stabilizer network, and we'll begin integration of our technologies immediately. The response was instantaneous. Acknowledged, Captain Janeway. We will transmit construction plans within the hour. And Captain? Thank you. The Asgard could not have asked for worthier successors than the alliance between Earth's forces and your crew. As the meeting broke up and her crew dispersed to their stations, O'Neill's face appeared on the view screen. The Colonel was grinning. Carter just got the data burst from the Asgard consciousness. She's making sounds I've never heard before, pretty sure it's scientific joy mixed with engineering ecstasy. Whatever you agreed to, it's making our people very happy. We're sharing our technology to build a defensive network, Janeway said. And in return, you're getting us home safely once it's operational. O'Neill's grin faded to something more serious. You sure about this? We can probably figure something out without you gutting your technological advantage. I'm not sure about anything, Colonel. But I'm certain that doing nothing isn't an option. Yeah, O'Neill said quietly. Welcome to our world, Captain. Where every choice is terrible and we make them anyway. Sounds familiar, Janeway replied, allowing herself a small smile. Get your engineers ready. We've got a galaxy to save before we can go home. The construction of the first-dimensional stabilizer took 37 days of round-the-clock work that pushed both Voyager's crew and SGC personnel to their limits. Torres and Carter had effectively merged their engineering teams into a single sleepless entity fueled by coffee, creative profanity, and the kind of technical problem-solving that made textbooks obsolete. Janeway stood in Voyager's engineering bay, watching her chief engineer and Carter argue over a holographic schematic that combined Federation, Asgard, and ancient technology in ways that shouldn't work but somehow did. The dilithium matrix can't handle direct interface with Naquadah generators, Torres insisted, gesturing at the power flow diagram. The resonance frequencies are incompatible. We need a buffer system. Or we modulate the Naquadah output to match dilithium harmonics, Carter countered, pulling up calculations that scrolled faster than Janeway could follow. The Asgard consciousness suggested using ancient crystal matrices as frequency converters. They're dimensionally transcendent. They exist partially in subspace, which means they can bridge the gap between our different energy paradigms. 7 of 9 approached from her station, carrying a modified ancient crystal that glowed with internal light. I have adapted this crystal using Borg nanoprobe technology. It now modulates between frequencies at quantum speeds. Testing indicates 94% efficiency in power transfer. Torres took the crystal, scanning it with her tricorder, and her expression shifted from skepticism to wonder. This actually works. 7. You just solved a problem that should have taken months. The Borg assimilated ancient technology on 6 occasions, 7 replied with characteristic bluntness. I retained incomplete memories of those assimilations. They proved useful. Carter was already integrating the crystal into the main schematic. With this, we can power the first stabilizer using 1 ZPM and Voyager's warp core running at 60% capacity. That's sustainable long-term and gives us a proof of concept for the full network. How many stabilizers are we talking about for complete coverage? Janeway asked, studying the galactic map that showed dimensional weak points scattered across the Milky Way like cosmic wounds. The Asgard consciousness calculated 17 primary stabilizers at critical junction points, Carter explained, highlighting positions on the map. With those operational, the dimensional barriers will reinforce themselves across the entire galaxy. Secondary ruptures will heal naturally over decades. Torres pulled up the resource requirements, and Janeway felt her stomach sink. We need 17 ZPMs. There aren't that many in existence. There are if you count the ones on Atlantis, O'Neill's voice announced as he entered engineering, Hammond and Daniel Jackson following. Which is why we need to have a very interesting conversation with the Atlantis expedition. Hammond carried a tablet displaying classified documents. Captain Janeway, we've briefed the International Oversight Advisory on your presence and the dimensional stability situation. They've authorized full cooperation with Atlantis, including resource sharing. The city currently has 4 functioning ZPMs at various charge levels. That gives us 5 total, Torres calculated. Still 12 short. Which is where ancient outposts come in, Daniel said, his academic enthusiasm barely contained. We've been cataloging locations for years but couldn't access most of them without the ATA gene or proper power sources. With 7's modified interface technology and Voyager's sensors, we can reactivate dormant outposts and harvest their ZPMs. The ones that aren't powering critical systems. Tuvok, who'd been monitoring the conversation from tactical, raised an eyebrow. You are proposing an extended campaign to locate and extract ancient power sources across the galaxy. This will take considerable time and expose us to numerous hostile forces. Probably, O'Neill agreed cheerfully. But hey, you wanted to help save the galaxy. This is what that looks like. Lots of gate travel, occasional firefights, and Daniel giving history lectures about civilizations that died before humans discovered fire. We estimate 6 months to gather sufficient ZPMs and construct the stabilizer network, Hammond said, his command authority brooking no argument. During that time, the Ori crusade continues. Intelligence suggests they're massing forces for a major push into Free Jaffa territory. If they break through, they'll have direct access to Earth. Janeway made the calculation instantly. You need Voyager in the fight. Not just as engineers, but as a combat vessel. Your ship has proven capable of engaging Ori warships and surviving, Hammond confirmed. The Odyssey and the new ship we're constructing, the Apollo, will be our primary fleet, but 3 vessels against hundreds of Ori ships isn't favorable odds. With Voyager's maneuverability and weapons systems, we significantly improve our tactical position. Chakotay stepped forward, his first officer's instincts immediately protective. General, with respect, Voyager isn't designed for sustained fleet combat. We're an explorer, not a battleship. 7 years in the Delta Quadrant wore us down. Our systems are patched, jury-rigged, and held together by Torres's genius and sheer stubbornness. A prolonged campaign could break us. Which is why we're proposing an integration, Carter said, pulling up new schematics that made Torres's eyes go wide. Using the Asgard database and your ship's existing systems, we can upgrade Voyager. Asgard shields to supplement your shields. Ancient drone weapons integrated with your torpedo bays. Asgard beaming technology to complement your transporters. You'd still be Voyager, but with the kind of protection and firepower to survive what's coming. Torres was already studying the plans, her engineer's mind racing. This would require completely rebuilding our tactical systems. Weeks of work, maybe months. 32 days according to the Asgard Consciousness's projections, 7 stated. If we begin immediately and work in parallel with stabilizer construction. Janeway looked at her crew, reading the exhaustion in their faces and the determination beneath it. They'd fought so hard for so long. She was asking them to fight longer, for a galaxy that wasn't even theirs. I need to address the whole crew, she said quietly. This isn't a decision I can make alone. We signed up to get home, not to fight another civilization's war. The mess hall was packed when Janeway called the shipwide assembly. Every crew member who could be spared from essential duties was present, engineers still wearing tool belts, science officers with data pads, operations personnel, even the night shift roused from sleep. Neelix had set out food and drink, because even existential decisions required coffee and whatever passed for donuts in the Delta Quadrant. Janeway stood at the front, no podium between her and her people, just a captain and the family she'd kept alive for 7 years. I'm going to be direct, she began, her voice carrying across the silence. We have the coordinates to go home. The Asgard legacy consciousness can power the dimensional crossing safely. We could leave within a week if we chose to. The ripple of excitement was palpable, quickly followed by confusion as crew members processed the "but" that was clearly coming. But the Ori are trying to tear holes in reality to spread their crusade across multiple universes. If they succeed, our galaxy, our Federation, our families, becomes their next target. And the only way to stop them is to build a network of stabilizers that will take 6 months and require us to fight alongside the SGC against overwhelming odds. She let that sink in, watching her crew's faces process the impossible choice. I need to know what you want. Not as Starfleet officers following orders, but as people who've earned the right to choose their own path. Do we stay and fight, or do we go home now and hope the barriers hold? The silence stretched for long moments before Harry Kim stood up. Captain, my parents think I'm dead. I've missed 7 years of their lives. But if we leave now and the Ori break through, my Earth won't even exist to miss me. We should stay. Ensign Samantha Wildman, holding her daughter Naomi, spoke next. I want my daughter to grow up in a universe that's still here. If that means fighting for 6 more months, then that's what we do. One by one, crew members voiced their support, some enthusiastic, some reluctant, but real. The consensus built like a wave, and Janeway felt pride and grief in equal measure. These people had sacrificed so much already. Then Lieutenant Joe Carey stood, and his voice carried the weight of dissent. Captain, I respect everything you've done for us. But some of us have families waiting. We've already given 7 years. How much more are you asking us to sacrifice? It was a fair question, and Janeway didn't flinch from it. I'm asking for 6 months. I'm asking you to trust that the Asgard consciousness will keep its word about safe passage home. And I'm asking you to live with the knowledge that we could have helped prevent an apocalypse and chose not to. That's not fair, Carey said quietly. Putting it that way makes anyone who wants to leave look like a coward. You're right, Janeway admitted. It's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. But I need honesty more than I need agreement. Anyone who wants to leave, genuinely wants to take the risk and go home now, I'll arrange transport to the dimensional crossing point. You'll go home, and there will be no judgment, no consequences. You've earned that right 1,000 times over. She looked around the room, meeting as many eyes as she could. But I'm staying. And I'm asking you to stay with me. Not because of orders or duty, but because it's right. Because we're Starfleet, and we don't abandon people who need us. Even if they're in the wrong universe. The vote, when it came, was overwhelming. Of Voyager's 146 crew members, 138 chose to stay. The 8 who chose to leave did so with the crew's blessing and genuine good wishes. Janeway arranged for them to be transported to the nearest Federation equivalent colony world with a guarantee of passage home once the dimensional network was stable. It hurt to see them go, but she understood. 7 years was enough to ask of anyone. The first Ori attack on the stabilizer construction site came on day 19, when the device was 70% complete. Voyager was in orbit providing sensor coverage when Torres's voice exploded over the comm. "Captain, we've got an Ori warship dropping out of hyperspace directly over the construction site. They knew exactly where to hit us. Battle stations." Janeway ordered, already moving to her chair. "Tom, get us between that ship and the site. Harry, hail the Odyssey and whatever free Jaffa vessels are in range. We need backup now." The Ori warship was the same class that had nearly destroyed them before, but Voyager had changed. Asgard shields powered up with a hum that resonated through the hull. Ancient drone weapons armed alongside quantum torpedoes. The integration wasn't complete, but it was functional. "They're charging weapons," Tuvok reported with Vulcan comm. "Multiple targets, they intend to destroy both Voyager and the stabilizer." Seven's voice cut through the tension. "Captain, I am detecting unusual subspace fluctuations near the Ori vessel. Analysis suggests they are attempting to create an artificial dimensional rupture, using the stabilizer's incomplete energy field as a catalyst. They're trying to tear a hole right here," Torres translated. "If they succeed while the stabilizer is incomplete, the rupture could consume this entire system." Janeway's mind raced through tactical options, discarding them as fast as they formed. Then she saw it, the one move that might work. "7, can we complete the stabilizer early? Even if it's not perfect, just functional enough to counteract what they're doing." "Possible, but it would require a massive power surge. More than the ZPM can provide alone. B'Elanna, can you route our entire warp core output to the stabilizer?" Torres's response was immediate, "Yes, but it would leave us defenseless. No shields, no weapons, dead in space while an Ori warship pounds us into atoms. Then we need someone to keep them busy." Janeway opened the fleet channel. "This is Captain Janeway to all Allied vessels. We're going to complete the stabilizer, but we need cover. Who's with us?" The response came in a chorus of voices, Free Jaffa commanders, Takara's ship captains, and O'Neill's dry drawl from the Odyssey, "Already on our way, Captain. Try not to die before we get there." It'd make Carter really sad. Voyager went dark, every system shutting down as Torres rerouted all power to the incomplete stabilizer below. On the view screen, the Ori warship's weapons charged, golden energy building to apocalyptic levels. Then the cavalry arrived. The Odyssey dropped out of hyperspace with Asgard weapons blazing. 3 free Jaffa Hotak vessels materialized from different vectors, their combined firepower forcing the Ori ship to divert shields. Takara's ships, small, fast, deadly, swarmed like insects, their weapons finding weak points. And on the planet's surface, the stabilizer activated. The effect was instantaneous and beautiful. A pulse of energy radiated outward, visible even from orbit, and reality itself seemed to solidify around it. The Ori ship's artificial rupture collapsed, unable to maintain coherence against the stabilizing field. The prior aboard the Ori vessel appeared on every ship's view screen simultaneously, his glowing eyes filled with fury. "You delay the inevitable. The Ori are infinite. They are eternal. They will." His transmission cut off as the Odyssey's main weapon, a massive Asgard plasma beam, punched through the Ori ship's shields and core. The explosion was spectacular, and Janeway allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before the guilt set in. She just helped destroy a ship full of people, brainwashed, enhanced, but still people. Power restored, Torres reported, bringing Voyager back online. Stabilizer is functional at 86% efficiency. It's holding, Captain. The dimensional barrier in this sector just got a hell of a lot stronger. One down, Janeway said quietly. 16 to go. On the planet below, the stabilizer hummed with power that would outlast civilizations, a monument to what humans could achieve when they worked together across impossible divides. And somewhere in the dark between stars, the Ori were massing their forces, preparing for a war that would decide the fate of multiple realities. The war came to Earth on a cold morning in March, 3 months into the stabilizer network construction, when sensors detected 15 Ori warships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Janeway was in a working session with Carter and Torres, finalizing plans for the 12th stabilizer, when the klaxons screamed through both Voyager and Stargate Command simultaneously. She was on her bridge in seconds, watching the tactical display populate with targets that made her blood run cold. 15 warships in formation, Tuvok reported, his Vulcan composure masking what had to be concern. They are advancing on Earth at maximum sublight speed. Estimated time to weapons range, 47 minutes. SGC is scrambling everything, Harry Kim said, his voice tight. The Odyssey and Apollo are launching. Free Jaffa reinforcements are en route, but they're hours away. It's going to be us and 2 BC-304s against 15 of those monsters. Chakotay pulled up the tactical analysis, and the numbers were brutal. Even with our upgrades, we're massively outgunned. 3 ships against 15. We can hurt them, maybe take down 2 or 3, but they'll get through to Earth, Janeway finished quietly. She opened the fleet channel. This is Captain Janeway to Colonels Carter and Ellis. What's our strategy? Carter's voice came from the Odyssey, already racing to intercept. We've been running simulations for this scenario. Our best option is a fighting retreat. Hit them hard, fall back to the orbital defense platforms around Earth, and make them pay for every kilometer. The platforms have ancient drone weapons. If we can draw them into that kill zone, we might even the odds. Might being the operative word, Colonel Ellis added from the Apollo, his tone grim. Captain Janeway, I've read your service record. You fought the Borg and survived. Any tactical insights? Janeway closed her eyes briefly, remembering wolf packs of Borg cubes, the feeling of fighting enemies that adapted to everything she threw at them. Then she opened them and saw the solution with sudden clarity. We don't fight them as 3 separate ships. We fight as one vessel with 3 hulls. Chakotay, send our tactical protocols to the Odyssey and Apollo, pattern Beta 7, the one we developed fighting species 8472. Carter, Ellis, can your ship's computers handle synchronized firing solutions? The Asgard systems can, Carter replied, excitement creeping into her professional tone. You're talking about using our 3 ships as a single tactical unit, coordinated fire, overlapping shields, synchronized maneuvers. Exactly. The Ori warships are powerful but slow. We're faster, more maneuverable. If we move as one unit, sharing targeting data and defensive coverage, we multiply our effective firepower while minimizing our vulnerabilities. It's risky, Ellis said. We'd need to maintain formation under fire, trust each other's pilots completely, and if one ship falls out of sync, then we die, Janeway said bluntly. But if we fight separately, we definitely die and Earth gets destroyed. I'd rather take the risk. Agreed, Carter said. Odyssey is ready to sync systems. Apollo confirms, Ellis added. Let's show these false gods what happens when humans work together. The 3 ships accelerated to intercept, and Janeway watched on her viewscreen as they arranged themselves in a delta formation, Voyager at the point, Odyssey and Apollo flanking at precise intervals. Their shields overlapped at the edges, creating a defensive bubble that was stronger than the sum of its parts. Approaching weapons range, Tuvok announced. Ori vessels are maintaining formation. They appear confident in their numerical superiority. Let's make them regret that, Janeway said. All ships, focus fire on the lead vessel. Maximum firepower, synchronized strike. Fire. The three ships unleashed hell as one entity. Voyager's quantum torpedoes and ancient drones, the Odyssey's Asgard plasma beams, the Apollo's rail guns and missiles, all of it converged on the lead Ori warship's shields in a perfectly timed barrage that lit up space like a dying star. The Ori shields buckled, failed, and the combined firepower punched through to the hull. Secondary explosions rippled across the massive vessel, and then it simply came apart, debris scattering across the solar system. One down. Paris shouted from the helm, before remembering himself and adding more professionally, target eliminated, Captain. Don't apologize for enthusiasm, Tom, Janeway said, allowing herself a tight smile. We're going to need it. All ships, evasive pattern Delta, maintain formation integrity. The remaining 14 Ori warships responded with overwhelming force. Golden energy beams crisscrossed space, and Paris flew like a man possessed, keeping Voyager in formation while dodging fire that would have vaporized them. The Odyssey and Apollo matched his moves with computer-assisted precision, the three ships dancing through death with synchronized grace. But they couldn't dodge everything. An Ori beam caught the Apollo's port side, and the ship shuddered despite Asgard's shields. Apollo reporting heavy damage, Ellis's voice was strained. Shield generators offline on decks 3 through 7. We're venting atmosphere. Apollo, fall back to secondary position, Janeway ordered, already adjusting formation. Odyssey, take their flank. We're covering their retreat while they seal those breaches. The formation shifted fluidly, Voyager and Odyssey moving to protect the wounded Apollo as it fell back toward Earth. The Ori pressed their advantage, four warships breaking formation to pursue. Captain, if we let them get past us, Harry Kim started. They won't, 7 of 9 interrupted, her hands flying across her console. I am detecting a subspace anomaly forming near the Ori vessels. Analysis suggests. Captain, it is a hyperspace window. Multiple vessels are emerging. The anomaly exploded into a dozen hyperspace windows, and through them came salvation. Free Jaffa Hatak vessels, Takare ships, and, impossibly, 3 Asgard-designed vessels that shouldn't exist because the Asgard were dead. This is Commander Vala Maldoran aboard the Free Jaffa vessel Bratax Pride, a cheerful female voice announced over the open channel. Sorry we're late. Traffic was murder. Oh, and we brought friends. The Asgard Legacy Consciousness's synthesized voice cut through the chaos. Captain Janeway, we have uploaded copies of our consciousness into prototype vessels constructed from our database. We are not the Asgard reborn, but we are their legacy made manifest. And we will not allow Earth to fall. The tide of battle turned in moments. The Free Jaffa forces swarmed the Ori ships with practiced coordination, their tactics honed from centuries fighting false gods. The Takare ships hit with surgical precision, targeting weapons arrays and shield generators. And the Asgard Legacy vessels, sleek, deadly, impossibly advanced, tore into the Ori warships with weapons that made even ancient technology look primitive. But the Ori weren't finished. From the largest of their remaining warships, a prior's voice boomed across all channels, you fight with courage born of desperation. But courage without faith is meaningless. The Ori are eternal. We are inevitable. And you are about to witness the consequences of your heresy. The massive Ori warship began to glow, energy building in patterns that made Voyager's sensors scream warnings. Seven's ocular implant blazed as she processed what she was seeing. Captain, that vessel is channeling power from the other Ori ships. They are creating a cascading energy reaction, a weapon capable of destroying everything in this system. Estimated detonation in 90 seconds. Carter's voice was tight with horror. That's not a weapon. That's a sacrifice. They're going to turn that entire ship into a bomb that'll take Earth, Mars, and everything else out to the asteroid belt with it. Janeway's mind raced through options, discarding them as fast as they formed. They couldn't evacuate Earth in 90 seconds. They couldn't destroy the Ori ship before it detonated, their shields were too strong, reinforced by the other vessels. They couldn't. Then she saw it. The one impossible option that might work. B'Elanna, can we generate a subspace bubble around that Ori ship? Use our warp field generators to create a contained space. Torres's response was immediate. Theoretically yes, but we'd need to extend our warp field to encompass a vessel 1,000 times our size. The power requirements would burn out every plasma relay we have, and even then, it might not hold. It doesn't need to hold forever, Janeway said quietly. Just long enough. B'Elanna, do it. 7. Coordinate with the Odyssey and Apollo, we'll need their power generators too. All 3 ships linking systems. Captain, if this fails, Chakotay started. Then we die saving 8 billion people, Janeway finished. I can live with that. Or die with that, as the case may be. All hands, brace for emergency power routing. Tom, get us right on top of that Ori ship. Voyager accelerated toward the glowing Ori warship, and Janeway felt time slow down the way it always did in moments of absolute commitment. She saw her crew at their stations. Harry coordinating power flow, Tuvok calculating precisely when to activate the field, 7 interfacing with technology across 3 ships simultaneously. Her family, one last time. Warp field extending, Torres reported, her voice strained. Odyssey and Apollo are syncing their generators. Power levels are off the charts. We're creating a stable subspace bubble, but Captain, it's not going to. The Ori ship detonated. The explosion should have vaporized the solar system. Should have turned Earth into expanding plasma and erased humanity from this universe entirely. Instead, it bloomed inside the subspace bubble, contained by a shell of warped spacetime that Voyager and its sister ships held together through sheer force of will and engineering impossibility. The 3 ships shook like leaves in a hurricane. Consoles exploded. Hull plating buckled. Crew members screamed as the bubble strained, flexed, and somehow, impossibly, held. For 5 eternal seconds, Voyager contained the wrath of false gods. Then the bubble collapsed, but the explosion was already spent, its fury dissipated into subspace where it could harm nothing. The Ori ship was gone, vaporized by its own weapon. And Voyager, Odyssey, and Apollo hung in space, battered and broken but intact. Damage report, Janeway gasped, her hands gripping her armrests hard enough to hurt. We're alive, Torres said, and she sounded surprised. I don't know how, but we're alive. Warp drive is completely offline, shields at 11%, weapons at minimal, but we're in one piece. Odyssey reporting similar damage, Carter's voice was shaky. That shouldn't have worked, Captain. Apollo confirms, Ellis added. We just rewrote the textbooks on impossible. The remaining Ori warships, leaderless and shocked, began to retreat. The Free Jaffa forces pursued, and the Asgard legacy vessels ensured none would escape to threaten Earth again. In the aftermath, with Earth saved and the immediate threat ended, Janeway sat in her command chair and felt every one of her 7 years away from home settle on her shoulders like lead weights. They'd done it. They'd saved a planet that wasn't even theirs. Hammond's face appeared on the viewscreen, and the General's expression carried emotion she'd never seen from him before. Captain Janeway, on behalf of Earth and every human in this galaxy, thank you. You saved us. All of us. We did it together, General, Janeway replied quietly. That's how we survive, together. But as repair crews began damage assessment and the Free Jaffa forces secured the system, 7 of 9 pulled up data on her console that made her ocular implant flicker with concern. "Captain, I am detecting something unusual. During the explosion containment, our sensors recorded massive subspace fluctuations near the dimensional stabilizers we've constructed. The energy release appears to have accelerated their synchronization." Janeway felt hope kindle despite her exhaustion. Meaning the stabilizer network just completed itself, Captain. All 17 nodes are now operational and synchronized. The dimensional barriers are reinforced. The Ori can no longer attempt reality breaches. 7 paused, and something like a smile crossed her face. "We won. The galaxy is safe." And that meant one thing: they could finally go home. The dimensional crossing point existed in a region of space the ancients had designated simply as the Threshold, a location where 3 galaxies' gravitational influences created a natural weakness in reality's fabric. Voyager hung in the void, surrounded by an escort fleet that represented everything they'd accomplished in 6 months of war, sacrifice, and impossible engineering. The Odyssey and Apollo flanked them, both ships bearing scars from the Battle of Earth but flying proud. A dozen Free Jaffa Hatak vessels maintained defensive positions, their commanders having insisted on seeing their allies safely home. Takare's ships darted through the formation, their pilots offering final farewells over open channels. And the 3 Asgard legacy vessels hung like silver ghosts, their synthesized consciousnesses maintaining the massive power array that would open the doorway between realities. On Voyager's bridge, Janeway stood before the viewscreen, watching the stars of a galaxy she'd never expected to see, much less save. Her crew was at stations, but the usual pre-launch tension was replaced by something more complex: relief, sadness, anticipation, and the peculiar grief of leaving a home you never meant to find. All dimensional stabilizers report optimal function, 7 of 9 announced from her station, her ocular implant reflecting the data streams. The barrier network is self-sustaining. Projected stability, minimum 12,000 years before natural degradation requires maintenance. Plenty of time for someone else to worry about it, Torres said from engineering, though her voice carried satisfaction. She'd left detailed maintenance protocols with Carter, along with enough technical documentation to keep SGC engineers busy for decades. Harry Kim looked up from operations, his expression troubled in a way Janeway recognized. "Captain, receiving final transmission requests from SGC, Free Jaffa High Council, Takare leadership, and about 40 personal messages for various crew members." "Pipe them through," Janeway said softly. "We're not leaving without saying goodbye." General Hammond's face appeared first, the commander who'd welcomed them as allies when he could have imprisoned them as threats. "Captain Janeway, I won't pretend to understand all the science that's about to happen. But I understand what your crew sacrificed to help us. The stabilizer network, the technology sharing, the battles you fought, Earth owes you a debt we can never repay. You gave us a place to belong when we were lost, General," Janeway replied. "That's payment enough." TLC's deep voice came next, and Janeway saw the Jaffa warrior's stoic face on a secondary screen. "Captain Janeway, you and your crew have shown that humans need not share a history to share honor. The Free Jaffa will remember Voyager in our songs of liberation. Indeed, you have earned the respect of all who fight for freedom." "We'll miss you too, TLC," Janeway said, smiling. "Keep fighting the good fight." Vala Mal Doran's transmission was characteristically irreverent. "So you're really leaving?" "Just when I was getting used to having other humans around who appreciated a good con." "Fine. But if you ever find your way back, drinks are on me." "Well, on whoever I'm stealing from that day." O'Neill's face replaced the others, and his expression carried the weight of someone who understood exactly what leaving meant. "Captain, you could have left 6 months ago. Could have taken the safe route home and let us figure out our own mess. But you stayed, you fought, and you gave us a chance to survive. That's Stargate material right there. Best kind of crazy. Takes one to know one, Colonel, Janeway replied, and she meant it as the highest compliment. Then Carter appeared, and Janeway saw tears the Major was trying to hide. Captain, I've learned more from working with your crew than from 4 years at the Academy. B'Elanna, 7, if you're listening, thank you. You changed how I think about engineering, about possibilities, about what we can achieve when we stop thinking in terms of limitations. Torres leaned into view from her engineering console. Carter, you're one of the best engineers I've ever worked with. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And for the record, your galaxy is lucky to have you. 7 of 9's voice was characteristically precise. Major Carter, your intellectual capacity and adaptive problem-solving demonstrate human potential at its highest expression. The Borg would have valued assimilating you. I value having known you as a colleague and friend. That's probably the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me, Carter said, laughing through tears. The Asgard Legacy Consciousness's synthesized voice came through all channels simultaneously. Captain Janeway, before you depart, we wish to convey something the Asgard could not say before our biological forms perished. We spent 10,000 years believing we were the pinnacle of evolution, that our technology made us superior. We were wrong. Humanity, in all its variations across realities, represents something we never achieved. The ability to grow, adapt, and transcend limitations through cooperation rather than isolation. Your Federation and this galaxy's alliance prove that evolution is not about perfection. It is about connection. Janeway felt her throat tighten. We couldn't have done any of this without your knowledge, without the Asgard's legacy. You gave us the tools to save both our galaxies. No, the consciousness corrected gently. We gave you tools. You chose to use them to save others rather than yourselves. That choice defines you far more than our technology ever could. The bridge fell silent as the farewells ended, and Janeway looked around at her crew. Some were crying openly, Harry wiping his eyes, Torres's jaw clenched against emotion. Others maintained professional composure that didn't quite hide the feelings beneath. They'd made friends here, found purpose beyond survival, proven themselves heroes in someone else's story. Captain, the doctor's voice came from sickbay via comm, his holographic programming allowing him perfect recall of every moment. I've compiled a complete medical database exchange with Dr. Fraser and the SGC. They'll have access to 24th century medicine, and I've included all our encounters with unique Delta Quadrant diseases. It seems inadequate, given everything. It's not inadequate, Doctor, Janeway assured him. It's generous, and exactly what they need. Chakotay moved to stand beside her chair, his presence solid and grounding as it had been for 7 years. The crew is ready, Captain. All systems prepared for dimensional crossing. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Janeway nodded, then opened a shipwide channel. All hands, this is the captain. 6 months ago, we arrived in this galaxy by accident, lost and far from home, again. We could have focused only on getting back, but that's not who we are. We're Starfleet. We're explorers, defenders, and when necessary, warriors. We stayed because people needed help. We fought because it was right. And now, we're going home because we've earned it. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Some of you made friends here. Some of you fell in love. She glanced at Harry, who'd been exchanging increasingly personal messages with a Free Jaffa communications officer. Some of you found purpose in fighting alongside allies who believed in the same things we do. Taking that away hurts. But remember, we're not leaving them helpless. We gave them tools, knowledge, and proof that impossible odds can be overcome. That's a gift that will echo through this galaxy for generations. We're going home, Janeway continued, her voice strengthening. Back to the Federation, to our families, to the lives we've missed for 7 years. But we're going home as something more than we were. We're going home as the crew that saved 2 galaxies. And whatever challenges await us, whatever the Federation has become in our absence, we'll face it together. As we always have. She took a breath. USS Voyager, prepare for dimensional crossing. Tom, take us in. Paris's hands moved across the helm with the confidence of someone who'd flown through hell and come out flying better. Aye, Captain. Setting course for the threshold. All thrusters answering. The Asgard legacy vessels began channeling power into the dimensional crossing apparatus, a massive array of ancient crystals and Federation technology that floated in space like a gate made of light. Energy flowed in patterns that hurt to look at directly, reality bending around the construct as two universes prepared to touch. Seven monitored the dimensional frequencies with bored precision. Harmonic resonance matching predicted patterns. The barrier between realities is thinning at this location. Calculating optimal crossing window. Captain, detecting massive subspace distortions, Tuvok reported, his Vulcan comm cracking slightly. The dimensional barrier is becoming visible to standard sensors. On the view screen, reality itself rippled like water, and through the distortion, Janeway could see something impossible, another sky, different stars, the familiar constellations of Federation space. Home. Right there, within reach. Crossing window optimal in 30 seconds, 7 announced. Captain, once we enter, the passage must close immediately to prevent cascade. There will be no return. Janeway felt the weight of finality settle on her shoulders. No return. No second chances. This was goodbye forever to a galaxy they'd bled for. All ships, this is Captain Janeway, she transmitted to the escort fleet. Thank you for seeing us off. Defend this galaxy well. Make the peace we fought for mean something. And remember that somewhere, in another reality, there's a crew who will never forget you. O'Neill's voice came one last time, give them hell when you get home, Captain. And if you've got an O'Neill in your reality, tell him he's got good taste in impossible situations. Will do, Colonel, Janeway replied, smiling through tears she didn't bother hiding. Stargate Command, this is Voyager. We're going home. Godspeed, Voyager, Hammond said. And thank you. For everything. The dimensional crossing window opened fully, and Paris didn't hesitate. Voyager accelerated toward reality's edge, toward the impossible shimmer that separated universes. The ship hit the barrier, and for one eternal moment, Janeway existed in both realities simultaneously. Seeing her crew on the bridge and also seeing them as they'd been 7 years ago, before the Delta Quadrant had changed them. Then the moment passed, and Voyager slipped through the barrier like a knife through silk. The transition was nothing like traveling through the Stargate. No molecular deconstruction, no compression. Instead, it felt like the universe hiccuped, stuttered, and then corrected itself. Colors inverted. Sounds echoed backward. And then everything snapped into focus with jarring clarity. Different stars. The right stars. Report, Janeway said, her voice barely steady. We're through, Harry Kim's voice cracked with emotion. Captain, I'm reading Federation transponder signals. Starfleet channels. We're in the Alpha Quadrant. Confirming, 7 added, her ocular implant blazing as she processed sensor data. Star positions match Federation databases. Subspace communication networks are active. Captain, we are home. The bridge erupted in cheers, and Janeway let them have their moment. They'd earned it. 7 years of impossible odds, 3 more months fighting someone else's war, and they'd finally made it. Home. The real home. Torres's voice came through engineering, thick with tears, Captain, all systems nominal. Warp drive is stable. We're ready for whatever comes next. Good, Janeway said, straightening in her chair and letting command settle back on her shoulders like an old, familiar uniform. Harry, open a channel to Starfleet Command. It's time to let them know USS Voyager is home. As the message transmitted across Federation space, carrying news that would change everything, Janeway allowed herself one final look back, not at the viewscreen, but inward, at the memories of a galaxy she'd never see again. The Stargate's chevrons locking. Carter's brilliant smile. O'Neill's dry wit. TLC's quiet honor. The Free Jaffa cheering after battles won. The Asgard legacy promising to carry on their species' work. They'd left pieces of themselves there, in another reality. But they'd brought home something too, proof that Starfleet's ideals meant something, even across the barriers between universes. Incoming transmission from Starfleet Command, Harry announced, his voice trembling with anticipation. There. Captain, they're scrambling half the fleet to our position. They want confirmation it's really us. Tell them, Janeway said, smiling as Earth's sun appeared on their screens, the right Earth, the right sun, the right universe. That Captain Catherine Janeway and the crew of USS Voyager are reporting for duty. We've been away. We won't bore them with all the details, but we brought back some interesting technical data. And we're ready to come home. Chakotay moved beside her chair, and his quiet voice carried pride that needed no amplification. We did it, Captain. We actually did it. Got lost in 2 galaxies and made it home from both. We did, Janeway agreed, looking at her crew, her family. And seeing the people they'd become through impossible trials. And we did it together. Just like always. Behind them, in a universe they'd never see again, the dimensional barrier sealed shut. The stabilizers held. And in that other reality, the people of the Milky Way would continue fighting, exploring, and reaching for the stars, carrying with them the knowledge that somewhere, in infinite possibility, allies had come from nowhere to help them survive. USS Voyager set course for Earth, for home, for whatever future awaited them. The journey was finally over. Or perhaps, as Janeway suspected, it was only beginning. The official Starfleet debriefing took 3 weeks and involved more admirals than Janeway had seen in her entire career. They documented everything, the spatial anomaly that pulled Voyager into another reality, the Stargate program in that universe, the Ori threat, the dimensional stabilizers, and most critically, the technology exchanges that had saved 2 galaxies. Some admirals were horrified at the Prime Directive violations. Others were fascinated by the tactical data. A few quietly suggested that Voyager's crew had done exactly what Starfleet was supposed to do, protect those who needed protecting, regardless of the cost. In the end, the Federation Council ruled that extraordinary circumstances justified extraordinary actions. Voyager's crew received commendations. Torres and Seven were offered positions at Starfleet Engineering's Advanced Research Division. The doctor's medical database became required study at Starfleet Medical. And Janeway received a promotion to Admiral, whether she wanted it or not. But in the quiet moments, when ceremony ended and Janeway stood alone looking at stars that were finally, genuinely hers, she thought about another Earth. About O'Neill's sarcasm and Carter's brilliance. About TLC's honor and the Free Jaffa's courage. About a galaxy that fought gods and won because someone chose to stand up. 7 of 9 found her on Voyager's observation deck one evening, the ship now docked at Earth Station McKinley for decommissioning. The former drone stood silently beside her captain, both women looking at Earth below. Do you regret staying to help them? 7 asked finally. We could have left immediately. Returned home 6 months sooner. Janeway considered the question carefully. No. I regret that we had to leave people we cared about. I regret that we'll never know how their story ends. But staying, fighting beside them, that's what we're supposed to do. That's what Starfleet means. The Borg would say we wasted resources on beings who were not our collective, 7 observed. The Federation says we violated protocols designed to prevent cultural contamination. But Captain, I believe we did something more important than either philosophy accounts for. What's that? 7's ocular implant flickered, and her voice carried absolute certainty, we proved that being human, in any universe, any galaxy, any reality, means choosing to help, even when it costs everything. That capacity for sacrifice and cooperation. That is the evolutionary advantage neither the board nor the gods understood. And it is why humanity, in all its iterations, will endure. Janeway smiled, placing a hand on Seven's shoulder. When did you become a philosopher? I had excellent teachers, Seven replied, and for once, her Borg precision couldn't quite hide the emotion beneath. Below them, Earth turned in familiar patterns. Above them, stars shone in configurations that Voyager had spent 7 years trying to reach. And somewhere, in another reality beyond dimensional barriers that would hold for millennia, an alliance of humans from 1,000 worlds continued the fight for freedom. Voyager had come home. But the crew would never forget the galaxy where, for 6 months, they'd become legends.